Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Friday, July 24th, 2009. We're here in the John Farrell Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall. We meet here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., and we are here live on Channel 35, and thank that channel which broadcasts us through the city's cable system for their good work, and welcome our viewers on Channel 35 as well as members of the public who are here in council chambers. We're also available on the internet at lacity.org, our city's homepage, where there's a wealth of links to improve the quality of life here in Los Angeles. And we also are available through council phone, which is 213-621-CITY. On Friday, it's custom for us to honor individuals and groups, as well as important dates throughout the city of Los Angeles, and part of our celebration as a great city. Our first presentation today, while we are waiting the rest of the council members who are expected, is going to be from Council Member Jan Perry, our President Pro Tem, and I'd like to recognize her at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to ask Kevin Sved and his friends and supporters to come forward. Oh, surprise. Are you surprised?
Yes,
okay.
A little bit.
Okay, great. Come stand around him. Come close. This is Kevin, should I say your middle name?
Sure.
Maxim? Or Maxime?
That's right. Maxim.
Maxim Sved. And Kevin is a wonderful individual and one of the co-founders of the Accelerated Community of Schools in the 9th Council District, which at one time was rated, I think, the #1 K through 12 school in the country by, was it Time or Newsweek?
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine. In what year?
2001.
To 2001. But Kevin is a special person. He is moving on. He's going to move to San Francisco. And while I can say personally how much I have enjoyed knowing him, watching him work, and just understanding him as a person, he is a highly compassionate individual whose commitment to educational excellence, especially to younger children, is really something to behold. He first started molding his vision by teaching third graders at 99th Street Elementary School in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And he personally revived and coached and became president of the Little League Baseball in South Los Angeles at our historic Wrigley Field. He, along with Jonathan Williams, first opened a charter school in South Los Angeles and then provided learning opportunities for kids from preschool to high school. He has been a pioneer in the growth of numerous charter schools in the community, and he has always been recognized for his activism and his vision and his kindness more than anything. And I'm really going to miss this guy. He is a model father, a model parent, enrolling his own kids in the school where he works so he could be close to them and be able to work and put in the hours that he needed to do. He played a strong leadership role in building the Board of Trustees and the founders and leveraging district, state, and national resources towards what is there today, a $60 million construction project. He has a vision of community health reflected in the school, in the academics, in the garden, in the arts department, the research, the fitness and health spaces of the buildings. And I can tell you that he has brought positive change to the intersection of Martin Luther King Boulevard and Main Street for all the children who pass through their doors, the countless hours that he has given, his personal time to assist the students and their families. He's a gift, and while he's moving to San Francisco, he'll still be giving here in our state of California, and so we're still really blessed to have him. And before I present this to him, I'd just like for him to say a few words if he wants, and introduce his friends.
Well, I just want to say I'm honored and humbled and grateful for having had the opportunity to serve the children and families and communities of Los Angeles for the last many years. And before me is my fiancée, Sandra Phillips. Eric Johnson, one of our board presidents over the last 7 or 8 years, and with us since we opened the Accelerated School. Jan Rice, our Director of Development, Peter Morrison, who's on our Board of Trustees, Jonathan Williams, my co-founder, and of course our Honorable Jan Perry, who's been so great supporting us in all that we've tried to do. So thank you, everybody. I'm, again, humbled and honored to be part of this. Thank you.
And suffice it to say, we're really going to miss him, but hopefully he won't be too far away by email and maybe Facebook, right? All right, so let me, and then we'll go in the back and take some pictures.
We have a second presentation as well from Ms. Perry. We have quorum in the meantime, so Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Westenstein, Garcetti, 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Reyes moves, Mr. Smith seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Koretz moves, Ms. Hahn seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. If we could now return to Ms. Perry for her second presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And today, it's with great pleasure that I recognize the sponsors of the, I believe it's the 14th annual it's the 14th Central Avenue Jazz Festival. They are K-Jazz, NBCU, NBC Universal, the Department of Cultural Affairs, the Los Angeles Conservation Corps, Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles, AEG, the Mayan, Dunbar EDC, Tom Safran and Associates, USC, the University of Southern California, the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles, the Coalition for Responsible Community Development, Superior Grocers, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, the Bank of America, and Coca-Cola. And I just wanted to show our poster for this year. Mr. Roberts, would you help me, please? Thank you. This is our poster for this year, and we'll be giving these away tomorrow and Sunday, July 25th and 26th. Starting at 11 a.m. tomorrow on Central Avenue. Now, with the support of the people and the individuals and the companies and the institutions I've just named, we have been able to continue to present the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, a unique cultural event that pays tribute to jazz music, African American culture, and the historic Dunbar Hotel on Central Avenue. The Jazz Festival is a 2-day event that will take place this weekend, and we'll have lots of food, fun areas for kids, and performances from jazz greats such as the CJS Quintet, Bill Henderson, the Littleton Brothers, Jazz on the Latin Side, All Stars, just to name a few. It's going to be an action-packed weekend right in front of the Dunbar Hotel. The city could not continue to provide this outstanding free community event without the generosity and the support of our sponsors, and that's why I am thanking them public. All of the sponsors that I've mentioned here today have sponsored the festival by providing more than $1,000 each to contribute to its overall success. So I want to thank everyone, as I did, and say how much I appreciate it. Their contributions have made the Central Avenue Jazz Festival a world-class event. People follow the festival year after year after year and come from states beyond California, Arizona, New Mexico, just to come to the Central Avenue Jazz Festival. So I hope all of you will come. Each one of you has a poster on your desk, along with a small card to remind you about the festival tomorrow and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., right there on Central Avenue in front of the historic Dunbar Hotel at 42nd and Central Avenue. Anybody want to say anything? You guys want to say something?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Perry, and thank you to the rest of the council for supporting us, supporting this event. You know, we talk about the Jazz Festival as a jazz festival. This is truly a legacy festival. Jose Rizzo, my dear friend, and I worked very hard to create acts and pull acts into the festival that reflect the legacy of Central Avenue. And if you're a Los Angeles historian, there's so much to know about what Central Avenue and the Dunbar Hotel and Jefferson High School and the Club Alabama have meant to the history of this city. So each year we're dedicated to that, and each year we're committed to do more and more. And I do want to say publicly over and over and over again, thank you to Jan Perry and the City of Los Angeles for supporting this event as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to Gerald Wilson, too. It's a good get. We will now have a presentation from Councilmember Cardenas.
Thank you very much. Gracias, presidente. Por favor, si pueden venir aquí enfrente, los representantes de esta presentación. I'm welcoming the members of the Colombian community as we are celebrating Colombia Independence Day, which is July 20th, 1810. 199 years ago. Today is the beginning of the bicentennial celebration of El Grito de la Independencia of Colombia. Colombia was the first Latin country to get its independence from Spain. Bogotá was the center of the first freedom movement in South America in the region known as Gran Colombia, which today includes the countries of Bolivia, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. Simón Bolívar was the architect of the independence movement for Bolivia, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. He is known as El Liberador, the liberator, and the George Washington of South America. I don't know if he had the white hair and all, but you get the picture. Colombia boasts of one of the most stable governments in Latin America. The highlights, we can highlight the partnership and ties between Los Angeles and Colombia by pointing out that there are over 30,000 Colombians living in Los Angeles today. The historical ties of brotherhood between Colombia and the United States join our peoples, our cultures, and our people, as well as reaffirm our way to value democracy, freedom, justice, and equality. We want to thank the Colombian people for their contribution to the development of Los Angeles and its economics, its social fabric, its political and cultural rights. At this moment, I'd like to give the microphone over to one of the officials of Colombia, Consul General de Colombia, Gabriel Jaime Restrepo Marín, to speak and say a few words. Gracias.
Muy buenos días, saludo muy especialmente al señor presidente del Honorable Consejo, a todos los demás miembros de este Consejo, a los miembros de la Ciudad de Los Ángeles, autoridades, a todos ustedes y a mi amigo Darío Monsalve de la organización a Colombianos en Acción. Para mí es un honor estar en este dignísimo recinto donde se definen el porvenir y el desarrollo de esta gran ciudad. Como representante del gobierno y de los colombianos aquí en Los Ángeles, recibo con mucho orgullo la resolución que declara al 20 de julio como el Día de Colombia aquí en esta ciudad. Este resuelto es un histórico gesto de hermandad de la ciudad de Los Ángeles con la comunidad colombiana y simboliza esa presencia de los colombianos que representa también un desarrollo, un progreso y la riqueza multicultural de esta ciudad. También reafirma los lazos de amistad, respeto y apoyo entre el gobierno y los pueblos de Colombia y los Estados Unidos de América. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Consul. Thank you very much. Also, at this time, I'd like to invite one of our community members, one of our citizens, part of the Colombo Americans in Action, also known as CASIA, the Executive Director, Dario Monsalve, to say a few words. But also, I'd like to point out that Dario and I only met recently, and he gave me his card, and he asked me, he says, you know, Colombian Independence Day is coming up, and as far as he can tell, and as far as I know, we've never celebrated Colombian independence here in City Hall of Los Angeles. So earlier this week, they had a wonderful celebration in our rotunda, and today we're recognizing them formally on behalf of the City Council of Los Angeles and all of the elected officials. So at this time, I'd like to thank Dario Monsalve for taking that leadership role and asking on behalf of his community, and which I believe today is going to be the beginning of every year and many, many years to come of celebrating Colombian Independence Day right here in City Hall of Los Angeles. Gracias, Dario. ¿Unas palabras?
I would like to thank to the Honorable Council of Los Angeles and to the Councilman Tony Cárdenas, our sponsor, for all the signs of the appreciation you have shown us during these times as we celebrate our National Day. A month ago, I was in this same place showing my support for a resolution being discussed by the Council which asked federal government for a favorable position on immigration reform. Each of you, honorable councils, spoke asking federal legislators to act in favor of millions of valuable people who need recognition as being part of this country, and you did it with courage, common sense, and more importantly, with advocacy and leadership. These values agree with the motto of Colombia, or Colombo American in Action, CASIA, advocacy and leadership. This is why receiving this recognition from the hands of one organization that values courage and justice make CASIA and the Colombian community as well feel proud and satisfied. This recognition challenges us to work harder helping our community. Thank you very much.
¿Quieres decir unas palabras en español si quieres?
Okay. Agradezco al honorable Consejo este reconocimiento, especialmente al concejal Tony Cárdenas, nuestro sponsor, por todas las muestras de celebración de aprecio que han tenido con nosotros estos días.
Sí.
Es para mí un honor recibir este reconocimiento de manos del Consejo, un Consejo que hace un mes estaba aquí discutiendo un apoyo o un llamado a los legisladores nacionales para apoyar la reforma migratoria que tanto se necesita. Eso demuestra que el Consejo tiene valor, coraje, liderazgo y activismo. Eso nos hace a nosotros orgullosos porque coincide con el moto o el lema de nuestra organización, Leadership and Advocacy. Muchas gracias, señores del Consejo, y Dios los guarde.
Thank you very much. I just want to point out to the people who don't speak Spanish who are listening, he basically said the same thing in English and Spanish, but he did something that's rare in these chambers, that somebody from the public would come and thank the City Council for our leadership, etc. We usually hear about 20, 30 minutes a day about all the things that they don't like about us, but I want to thank you very much for showing your appreciation for our leadership on the City Council. At this time, I would like to present two resolutions on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, signed by all of the elected officials of the City of Los Angeles, all the current elected officials, including our current City Controller and City Attorney, and all of the council members and the mayor, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, as we declared in the city July 20th, 2009, as Día Nacional de Colombia, basically National Day of Colombia here in the City of Los Angeles. The official day is July 20th of this year, and that's our way of showing our friendship and appreciation for the Colombian community here in Los Angeles. Felicidades. We also have another resolution that we're giving on behalf of CASIA, which is Colombianos en Acción, and they are a civic organization that does wonderful things here in the community and ties together the more than 30,000 Colombians who are our neighbors, our friends, and our colleagues here in Los Angeles, and we want to thank them as well for their leadership and their wonderful work and bringing together their culture and educating those of us who Los Angeles who didn't know very much about Colombia, but now we appreciate it much, much more, and we realize how involved they are in our community. So congratulations, felicidades, Acacia.
Thank you.
And on every independence, usually said in English, a little differently than Spanish, but I will also repeat, que viva Colombia, long live Colombia.
Que viva. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
We'll celebrate at Cheap Chat together, a great Colombian restaurant in Silver Lake. With that, we'd like to recognize Mr. Wesson for our next presentation.
No, por favor. Siguen con la cámara.
No, that's not my hat. Today, Mr. President, I want to thank you for recognizing me. Today is Pet Adoption Friday, and I'm waiting for my pet to arrive. Here he is. What we have here is, you have to pick him up. See, this is the kind of work that the interns in my office do. They're dog handlers, dog whisperers. But what we have, and a lot of you will really appreciate this dog's name. This dog is a mixed Chihuahua Dachshund, and I ask whoever adopts him, you can't change his name. His name is Nate. His name is Nate. So Nate is looking for a home. His other family, because of the economy, had to move into another location, one where you can put him up here, one where they couldn't keep Nate. So Nate has all of his shots ready to go. He is a real cool character. Anybody interested in giving Nate a home, please call 888-452-7381. What I hope is that someone in one of the offices upstairs will look and just see how great of a dog Nate is and come down here and adopt him. Mr. Koretz, you're new here. We have a 100% adoption record here in the city of Los Angeles. About 70+% of our animals are adopted by City Hall staff. I think what we need to do, you and I need to get together where twice a month I do a dog, then twice a month you do a cat. And then I think that I know that you are an animal lover. So anyway, before Mr. Koretz brings all these pretty kittens here, we're trying to find a home again for Nate. You want unconditional love? Trust me, this little fellow will give it to you. And the last thing that I want to mention is that Saturday, August 8th, at the North Central Care Center, they're going to have a pet adoption festival. So there's going to be food, fun, and pets. Again, that's Saturday, August 8th, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you want information on that, just call 888-452-7381. Now, Nate, I want you to give the camera one more look. Let's look over here, Nate. Let's take a picture. I think he just talked to me. Anyway, thank you, Mr. President. Come on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. And if we can run through the agenda, please.
Mr. President, the first item on the agenda is an item notice for public hearing, finding a public convenience or necessity in Council District 11, and I believe there's a request to continue that matter to August 5th.
Okay, if there's no objection, we'll open and close the public hearing. We don't have any cards on that. We'll continue that till the 5th of August. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 2, and that's also finding a public convenience and necessity in Council District 9. The recommendation is to grant the application.
All right, we'll move to the granting of the application. If nobody wishes to call that special, we do not have cards from the public, so we'll open and close the public hearing on that. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Next item, items 3 and 4 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay. Anybody wishing to call 3 or 4 special? 3 or 4 special? If not, let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held, items 5 through 14, and there are cards on 5, 7, 8, 9, 13, and 14.
Okay. We'll hold those special for cards from the public. Open and close the other public hearings. Mr. Rosendahl, you have a special? Almost. We're not quite there. 5 through 14, colleagues. Any specials 5 through 14? If not, let's take up the balance then. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next item, please.
Next item is on the continuation agenda, item number 15, and I believe Mr. Rosendahl wanted to call that special.
Yes, we'll call that special for Mr. Rosendahl. Next items.
Next items, also on the continuation agenda, are items 16 through 18. Public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration, and there are cards on 16 and 18. That would leave 17 before council.
Okay. Anybody wishing to call it special? Ms. Hahn?
16, well, we'll hear 16, right?
We'll have that special. Anybody wishing to call 17 special? If not, let's go ahead and prepare the roll on 17. Please tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If we can call the roll for the special meeting, please.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 12 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, first items, please.
First items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 19 through 22.
Anybody wishing to call 19 through 22 special?
And Mr. Berlin, on item number 21, that was in committee this morning, and I
Correct.
believe the committee report will be submitted. Do you wish to hold that one on the desk?
Let's hold that on the desk momentarily. I think there's just one small amendment made to that, which was to include the CLA and the communications with Housing and Urban Development Corporation. But otherwise, there are no changes made. If nobody wishes to call other specials, let's go ahead on the balance. Please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items on the special are items 23 through 26, and those are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration on those.
There's no objection. Those are before us. We have cards on 23, 24, and 25. And Ms. Perry also, I think, let's call those special. On 24. And 26, we have no cards, so we'll close the public hearing. And if nobody from council wishes to call that special, let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If we can temporarily recess the special meeting, go back to the regular meeting, and I'd like to recognize Mr. Cardenas for our last presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to ask At Our Expense to please come forward. And I'm not talking about the taxpayers. That's the name of their band, At Our Expense, okay? Thank you very much, young men. I just wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate At Our Expense, and they're from Arleta, right there in the San Fernando Valley. They were the winners of the first annual San Fernando Valley's Battle of the Bands that was given in the 6th Council District. There have been many Battle of the Bands, but this is the first one that was sponsored by the 6th Council District and held in the courtyard behind where we get together every first Friday of the month in Van Nuys. We have a wonderful, beautiful courtyard, and we're using it more and more on behalf of the community. On that Saturday, June 13th, we hosted the first annual San Fernando Valley Battle of the Bands at our Van Nuys Civic Center, and over 7 bands competed for an opportunity to perform live in front of our stage there, and also in front of industry professionals, and also an owner of a major nightclub. And in the works were an opportunity for them to earn free vocal lessons and an in-studio interview with a local radio station. The event was a great success. There were no negative incidents at the event, and I want to repeat, there were no negative incidents at the event. In some of the meetings with my staff, there was a little bit of concern about the police and the teenagers and all these kinds of things. I just want to tell you, it was a wonderful event. Everything went smoothly, and once again, we proved that when we put forth an opportunity to give our young people a chance to have a safe and wholesome event, they do a wonderful job, and they act accordingly, and everybody enjoyed themselves. Even myself, they almost tried to get me to dance out there with them, but I had just had shoulder surgery that saved me.
You've been using that excuse for years, Mr. Cardenas.
You caught me. Now next year I'm not going to have an excuse. So next year I guess I'll have to get out there and dance with them as well. Again, there were over 300 young people that came to the event, and the average age was about maybe 14 or 15 years old. And these are the types of events where, once again, we need to have for our youth as we see many levels of government cutting out program after program. There's a need for this free local venue, and we're going to continue to try to have events like this. And like I said, we're calling it the first annual because we expect to have a second and a third and even more. Also, I want to remind the audience that we have a lot of opportunities in our parks, and we have a lot of parks that are going to be open extra hours this summer, so this is an opportunity for us to remind all of you that we need to continue to support our children and send them, make sure that they go to these safe places where we are providing opportunities for our young people. And in addition to that, at our expense, on July 11th, we kept our word as they were the winners, and we went ahead at our expense, got them an interview with KPFK, which on the radio show Travel Tip for Aslan radio show, and there they played their music on the air, and they had the opportunity to hear their own music live broadcast out to all of Los Angeles, and it's my understanding that the young men here were just beside themselves, just excited at the idea that people could hear their music beyond the corridor in which they played for our concert. So with that, I'd like to give the opportunity of one of the band members. I think Daniel Santamaria, the guitarist, I think he drew the short straw, so he's going to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. I guess first off, I'd just like to say thank you to City of Los Angeles for giving us the opportunity of being able to go out there and play, and to actually pick us to actually win the Battle of the Bands. We actually didn't even believe we were going to win. And also for giving us the opportunity to go onto the radio and he was right, we were really excited to hear our music out there, and we were just, I don't know. Also, I guess I'd like to thank all the people here that came out to see us, even though we were a little late, unfortunately, but we made it just on time. Just for always supporting us. We've been a band for 2.5 years now, and from the beginning, these guys over here have been with us, going to our first show, and just kept showing up, and the band is starting to grow, and we've got new music and stuff, and hopefully this will help us out, and with the opportunity Mr. Cardenas has given us here to show up, and hopefully that can give us more fans, and maybe something cool would happen, something big might happen with us. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Daniel, you mentioned that you guys got there a little bit late, but you were able to hit the stage on time and get the job done, and obviously you did a wonderful job. But let me give you a little bit of advice, especially to the young people out there. I was a businessman before I became a councilman, and no, I was never a musician. Trust me, if I started singing, this place would clear out quickly. But I did read a lot of books on success and trying to figure out how to do a great job at whatever I did. And it was something that occurred over and over and over, and written and quoted on behalf of billionaires and people who are considered to be extremely successful in many walks of life. And one of the things they say is, you just have to make sure that you show up at least 80% of the time. And when you're there, be present at least 80% of the time with your mind and your heart and everything else, and you will find success. So don't worry about being perfect. And the reason why I say that to our young people is because all too often we are our worst critics. And young people get down on themselves a little too much sometimes. And just understand, all of these adults here, we're not perfect, and neither are you. So just keep in mind that you showed up, you were able to make the stage, and look at you, you won the Battle of the Bands, and we have some certificates for every single one of you. First, we have Angel Carmona. Next, we have Daniel Lopez. Next is Robert Angel. And the next is Nelson Cornejo. Okay? And Daniel Santamaria. Thank you very much, Mr. President, members.
Mr. Cardenas, can you have the young men say what instrument they play, or who's a singer, and what role they play in the band? I'd be very interested.
Yeah.
My name's Danny, and I play guitar and I sing backup.
My name is Angel Carmona, and I do singing, actual singing. Thank you.
I'm Danny, and like the councilman said, I play guitar.
I'm Nelson. I play the drums.
My name's Robert, and I play bass.
Excellent. As you can see, they have half of what made one of the most greatest bands in the world a success. They've got the hairdo. They don't have the English accent, but I think these kids are going to go far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and congratulations. And that is our last presentation. That'll take us to our general public comment. And Clyde Williams, Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker. And then we'll hear from Mr. Arnold Sachs.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA, and this is one of the situations where it gives me conflict, pride in what was just done, shame for what was considered this last week and will be reconsidered next week. Decorum, rules of decorum. As presented, they're arbitrary. Therefore, they will be subject to litigation. And unlike others, I put my money where my mouth is. So anyone that wants to litigate against it, I will be supporting them. Shame on us. Aren't we more powerful than this? Don't we have the ability to stand up to whatever is given? Don't we have the ability to restrict certain things without restricting everything? I reserve 1 minute.
That'll be the end of the time for you. Mr. Sachs is next. After that is Soledad Garcia in San Pedro.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I'd also like to discuss the council's actions regarding decorum and some of the comments made by the council members. Councilman Wesson was concerned about the language protection for children. Maybe he hasn't ridden a bus or gotten on a rail car when school children get out for their recess in the afternoon. Come along with me, Mr. Councilman Wesson. You'll be in for an education. Maybe you haven't watched TV like MTV or picked up a cell phone when there's sex texting. Maybe you haven't seen an advertisement for erectile dysfunction and had to explain that to a child. If Norman Lear was to go before a studio and present an award-winning program, All in the Family, for telecast today, he'd be laughed out of the studios. This political correctness and this tying it into a holding hostage of people's rights to speak and what can be said is ridiculous. Councilman Alarcon made a comment about improving the nature of the speakers that come before City Council, how it invigorates him. I appreciate being acknowledged like that, especially when you consider all the successful projects endorsed and moved by the council in areas of transportation, in affordable housing, in the billboard blight, in a business atmosphere that occurs in L.A. Why, just look at the marathon. What a great job that was done there. People will say, well, the race is being run back in March, but not on the original March date, and when it interferes with Easter Sunday, which will undoubtedly happen, then it'll have to be moved again, and another contract will be broken. And who'll pay then? Why, the public. And as Mr. Weezer said, I believe, Mr. Cardenas, I believe, said, get over it. So if you called a criminal, get over it, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. Appreciate your comments. Dr. Soledad Garcia is our next speaker in San Pedro. And after that will be Anthony Manzano here in Council Chambers. Good morning, Dr. Garcia.
Good morning, Mr. President. I have 4 separate comments, and they all have to do with DWP. The first one is the rate adjustment. The DWP committee unanimously supports water conservation. It also recommends to the City Council that the rate restructuring modification include a new tier between the proposed Tier 1 and Tier 2, which would cost about $4.45 as opposed to $5.48. Number 2, last year the Council noted that the DWP energy cost adjustment factor was deleteriously harmful to the resident ratepayers. This year it is worse in that there is no ceiling. The community is paying dearly as it is, and without a vetted solar plan, the City Council is urged to demand that the DWP power unit place an ECAF ceiling. Number 3, for the Council's information, the DWP committee unanimously voted for a ratepayers advocate, but so has the Valley Alliance. We look forward to having the East Side Coalition, West Side Alliance, and Harbor Area Neighborhood Councils pass the same resolution. The City Council is urged to have a ratepayers advocate placed before DWP. And number 4, we are in the 3rd-year drought, and DWP has responded by having the water conservation plan and the water efficiencies for new construction, retrofits, and renovations. The city is urged to ask for curtailment of new developments at a time when the imported water are at a reduced level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. Anthony Manzano is our next speaker, and then Pat McCosker will follow. Good morning, sir.
Good day. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, council members. My name is Anthony Manzano, and usually I speak to you guys regarding emergency preparedness. I'll touch on it lightly. As a neighborhood preparedness ambassador, I've also been working as a Pasadena Caltech Los Angeles associate, and I want you guys to mark a date down which will be recognized statewide as the Great Southern California Shakeout. It is scheduled for October 15th, and it will take place at 10:15 a.m. So remember, 10:15 is going to be the Great Southern California Shakeout. Another date I'd like you guys to mark down or just keep in mind would be October 2nd. Since February, I've been assisting Lance Armstrong and his Livestrong Foundation and supporting him. I know he's out in France doing the best he can, but it's a great opportunity for you guys as city leaders to recognize the importance of the disease of cancer and help recognize Livestrong Day on October 2nd, and perhaps just come to council wearing yellow. I want to say congratulations to the Rose Hill All-Stars. Yesterday they won a game against Normandy All-Stars in a victorious game 8-7, which will lead them to tomorrow's final game Saturday at Montecito Park. If they win, they will be our region champions, which is the Rose Hill All-Stars. And I want to say thank you to them. I don't know if they're going to be watching, but I'll be out there at the game tomorrow, Saturday, supporting them. And I do support a lot of activities in the community. Each of my council members, Ed Reyes and Jose Huizar, are familiar with what I do. I've given them a document recently on a proposal for one-way streets that I've been working on for about 2 years now. And the community of Rose Hills has rich history. As far back that I've found documents is back to 1769. And it needs some services and some maintenance, but hopefully with some of the funding coming through the stimulus package, the one-way proposal that I'm considering will be recognized and honored. Thank you guys for your time. My name is Anthony Manzano, and I'll be of service continually.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manzano. Pat McCosker is our next speaker. After that is Craig Kessler.
Morning, Mr. President, council members. Pat McCosker, President United Firefighters, Los Angeles City. Earlier this week, you got a letter from the mayor announcing that he was going to begin closing 28 fire companies and ambulances every day on August 6th. In the letter, he says to you quite clearly the reason he's doing so is to wrest further concessions from the firefighters union in contract negotiations. I want to make you all very aware of that and make you aware of the danger of that. We've done this before. We've been down the brownout road before. We had bad outcomes every single day because of those closed fire companies and ambulances, and we had very tragic deaths that occurred and ultimately led to the undoing of the brownout plan. We do not want it to come to that. We want you to understand that we have been the only party to our negotiations that has acted in good faith. We have, by the way, the mayor's spokesman went on the evening news a couple nights ago and said very inaccurately that he wanted the firefighters to come back to the table in negotiations. We have been at the table for meetings, every single meeting, demanding meetings. We have met privately with the mayor, unfortunately for us, and that went very badly. We were used in those private talks regarding our negotiations trying to work something out. I have said repeatedly, and I want to say here again, we will make sacrifices. We will do whatever is necessary to help the city get through the financial crisis we're in right now. All we ask is that what we're asked to do be equal with the rest of the city's workforce. The mayor put out a press release just the other day announcing the good news on the contract that you all supported with the city civilian workers, and announcing that it meant that there would be no layoffs, no furloughs, no service reductions. On the heels of that, he's going to reduce our service, put our lives at risk, and more importantly, the public's lives at risk. That is not right. He's pointing the gun at our heads, and the shots are going to hit the public, and we do not want that to happen. This is dangerous. You all need to be involved. I'm here to ask you today to conduct a hearing here in this room to hear from us, because I want to tell you the truth about negotiations, because you all can stop this from happening, and make sure the funds are available for us to keep operating in the meantime.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCosker. Very briefly, Ms. Hahn?
Very briefly, I just want to let the council know that I am introducing a motion today, Rule 23, that specifically will ask us to discuss all of these issues on Tuesday.
Right. Thank you. Craig Kessler is our next speaker. Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn.
Mr. President, I actually put in a card to speak on the two items.
I'm sorry, I think it was Ms. Fowler. You're right. I will call you forward on those. Thanks very much, Mr. Kessler. That will close our general public comment. We have items that have been called special for cards from the public and by council members next. Item 5 is the first. Arnold Sachs, if you'd like to come forward on number 5.
Yes, good morning again. Thank you, Arnold Sachs. Just prior to today's council meeting, there was a meeting about economic stimulus funding and the programs, and all the people, all the council members who attended this meeting and sit on the commission, the panel, were all discussing how gung-ho they are for stimulus packages, for public works departments, ready to be moved forward, shovel-ready, this and that. But none of them have discussed the procedures involved. The request for proposals, the request for bids, all the work that needs to be done before any work is actually passed to the public to hire people for these projects. If the council was sincere, and its members were sincere, a series of requests, a series for proposals, a series of bids would be in the pipeline yesterday. But the gap between reality and the truth will focus and come to the head when the money is granted to the city from whatever stimulus fund comes from the government, and then, and only then, the proposals will go out, the bids will go out, and 6 months down the highway, when the money mysteriously shrinks like a turtle, then the funds will be available for public projects. But that's just the council acting like the council. Thank you.
Thank you. As a point of information, all of the requests for proposals and any of the reinvestment money is public on our website. Some of that is being done by existing city workers, but contrary to what was heard, that is all available online. And for folks that are interested in bidding for work, we can go both through the Small Business Office of the City of Los Angeles and also through the recovery.lacity.org website. That'll close our public comment on that item. If we can please open the roll.
Mr. President, there's no action required on that one. That's
Okay.
the standard placeholder.
Okay, great. We did have one card in public comment that I did not see. My apologies in Van Nuys. Mr. Nightingale, if you'd like to address the council. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Rick Nightingale. I was watching the council on TV, and on this 54, I turned around, I taped it because I wasn't here, and it didn't show. It showed Mr. Smith talking, and then it got cut off. I'd sure like to know why that thing got cut off, because I wanted to know what happened. And I'll go along with Dr. Clyde Williams. If somebody wants to put up some money, I'll put up some money too against this thing. If you guys are going to try and lock our mouths and what you can do and what you can't do. I disagree what happened there. I didn't like what happened there. But I don't like you cutting off and think that you can hold back what the Constitution says that we can do. So I'll go along with Dr. Williams. You let me know if you need some. Something else is that I turned around and saw the news last night. And Mr. Carden just turns around and gets on and says, I'm sorry, man, our parks are getting really dry. And we're going to have to go back to watering them because we can't have them dry up and so forth. Well, guess what? I have 3/4 of an acre. I turn around and have all this shrubbery. I got $300,000 worth of stuff. I got a 12-foot hedge around my property, and it's getting a little brown. Now, why should I turn around and sacrifice my situation and so forth? And DWP sent me a letter saying, well, you're using a little bit too much water. I was in with the 15-minute thing on the sprinklers, and I still get a letter. Now, what gives you people the right to do this? I don't care what happens. You people don't have the right to do that. I think 1,000 Oaks went to 3 days. Probably 3 days would really help. But you put us to 2 days? It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. You think that, like I said, goes right back to the same situation. You're above the rules. You make a rule, you break the rule, and then everybody sticks with the rule because this is what we're going to do, and you can't do anything about it. It really stinks. I'll tell you about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nightingale. We'll go back to items that were called special by cards and by members. Our next item is number 7. Mr. Sachs, if you'd like to come forward on item number 7.
President, while that's coming forward,
Yes, Mr.
at the
Smith,
request
yeah.
of America, we have number 20 go forth with.
Sure. I thought you were going to also... Oh, that's in a special meeting. When we get back to it, we will. And as individuals, those water rules apply to us as well. Mr. Sachs, item number 7 is before us. It is...
Thank you. Good morning. A business attraction and retention program. I don't know if any of you happen to read today's Orange County Register. I just happened to pick up part of it. In the editorial, City of LA, a job-killing machine. This gentleman who has his business here, he's the founder and president of Creators Syndicate, writes an editorial about how wonderful the business and retention program is. It's so great that he's leaving the city. Why? Because the city has reversed itself on its rulings and classifications of his business. He goes on to say in this article that the official position of the city is it's not bound by past rulings. Only taxpayers are. I'm reading from the article today. We work with hundreds of outside agents, consultants, independent contractors, and support services, many of whom pay taxes to the City of Los Angeles. This spurs a job creation ripple effect on the city's economy. Yet I suspect many companies like ours already have quietly left town in the face of the city's taxes and regulations. This will help explain the erosion of jobs. He finishes up by stating, as long as City Hall operates like a banana republic, which is why is anyone surprised that jobs have left the city in droves, and that Los Angeles is teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. What I have to say to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you want to respond briefly?
On this item?
Yes.
I pushed my button, so should
Yes,
I? All right,
please.
thank you.
On the side. I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm glad that Mr. Sachs actually brought this up because I read that article too and was aghast. When I checked into it, I would recall for the public's point of view, first of all, that this council reduced taxes by 15% across the board to businesses. We reduced and eliminated 60% of the categories that people were paying tax in. And at the same time, we took our tax categories from 52 categories to 7. Doing so, 80% of the people had their taxes reduced because they went into a lower category. This gentleman's taxes went up because he didn't go into the lower category. He's one of the minority that actually had to pay a little bit more. So for the whole of Los Angeles, we already brought tax reform, we brought tax cuts, we actually put money back in the economy, 15% tax cut over 5 years. I don't know what more these people want, but this one particular company was one of the very few small ones that were left off that chart. And you can't be perfect for everybody when you do that. So we did the right thing by 80% of the businesses in this city got reductions. 40% of the people got eliminated from the tax rolls completely, and the other 60% had a tax cut. He's one of the disgruntled ones that just didn't get the deal, and I'm sorry for him. But for 80% of the business in this city, we did the right thing. And we have shown that we are business friendly. We are showing that we're trying to create economic incentives to be in L.A. And those kind of articles are inappropriate and wrong. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to call that out in public. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Mr. Cardenas.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, did you say 8% of the businesses got a tax reduction or 80? 80% of the businesses got a tax reduction in the city of Los Angeles through the actions that were taken by the city council just a few years ago. I remember that, and I'm glad you're pointing that out, Greg Smith, because all too often the city of Los Angeles is being burdened with the idea, and I call it an idea, not a fact, that Los Angeles is not business friendly. With all due respect, when you look at Los Angeles has its good parts and its bad parts. In some ways, yes, we might be able to make some improvements, but please don't attack us on an area which we've made drastic improvements and an area which cut about $90+ million annually out of our revenue to the city coffers. With those actions of cutting taxes to over 80% of the businesses, we knowingly reduced our annual revenue by $90+ million. We knew that's what we were doing. We wanted to do that, and we actually did it. So with all due respect, for those people who think that all politicians, especially Democrats, all we care about is getting more taxes, we actually took a vote of the council unanimous to cut the taxes in the city by over $90 million and effectively reduce taxes for over 80% of the businesses that do business in the city of Los Angeles. And on top of that, we actually simplified it by reducing it. I think it was over 90 or 75 categories. We reduced it down to, I think, 7 or 8 categories. So there were a lot of things took place, a lot of positive things. I would hate for one comment to overshadow all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardenas. With that, let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. And we've got a request to take number 18 out of order. We have cards from the public. Dr. Clyde Williams, I'm sorry, but just before that, we have some good news, I think, from an earlier presentation. Mr. Wesson?
Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Rosendahl to come forward. And everybody met. Mr. Rosendahl got on the phone and found our new adopted daddy, and everybody met Nate earlier. Well, I want to present to you Nate's new father. His name is Nate Kaplan. So we've got Nate Sr. and Nate Jr., and we still have our 100% adoption rate.
And I might say that when I saw Nate in the back, and I said, I got my Nate upstairs, Nate, and there we got Nate together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and we have a dog named Herb Wesson coming next week, so look out. Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker. No, okay, he passes. Our next speaker then is Dr. Soledad Garcia in San Pedro. Good morning again.
Good morning again, and and that's good. It's something cute this morning. The DWP board amended the Emergency Water Conservation Ordinance to include several exceptions. Lee Alpert, the president of the DWP board, was looking out for the public when he stated that large lots, parks, and private and public golf courses should observe the same rules that the stakeholders have. Large landscape customers should look to their own, this is me speaking, gray waters, and also hook into recycled water. The latter would be an initial cost if they don't have it in place, but it would be in the best interest of the city. There is no strong mention of enforcing the use of gray water internally, but it would be a fantastic way of maintaining and keeping more potable water for the use of the citizens. The city water source should be minimally used carefully monitored and metered, and especially with the large acreage areas, perhaps they should be looking to remove water-consuming plants. The city needs to participate in ensuring that Southern California receives its full water entitlement, be it from the Colorado, Eastern Sierras, or State Water Project. The first prerequisite for water distribution should be for community residential use. There must be greater use of gray and recyclable water for larger landscape use. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Craig Kessler is our next speaker. And I've refiled you for item 25 as well, so we'll call you up on that one as well. Go ahead.
Can I just, may I reserve my comments for item 25?
Sure, no problem. Rick Nightingale is our last speaker in Van Nuys on item number 18.
Yes, Rick Nightingale. There was no Ontario here, so I didn't know what the 18 is going on regarding. I talked about this water situation. Since, if I'm not mistaken, I read in the paper that DWP cannot give the council this $30 million a year or something. I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's the way I read and a few other people. Why can't you turn around and use that money to turn around and get gray water to the people that need it? You're wasting it, you're flushing it down the toilet over here in the San Fernando Valley at Woodley, where a lot of people would love to get it, like me. You go right down Balboa, you can get go up to the golf course, you can pick these big lots up where I live and so forth. And you could use it. And it would utilize a lot of the problem that we're having. I don't understand why they haven't done anything about that. They just barely got Woodley Park and so forth on gray water after all those years. And I think it's a darn good idea. I don't know why you're not proceeding it, but I think you better do something, because I think people are going to riot on you. I'm telling you, this is the old Western days about water. Water controls everything. You people want everybody to come here to L.A., it's overcrowded and so forth, and you just think you can just keep building it, but everybody that comes here needs water. And water is the downfall or the upfall of everything that goes on. Without it, you can't survive. And that's the way it is. And if you can't utilize this gray water, you made a big thing about putting the stations in and refining it and so forth, then you better start using it, and using it properly. There is nothing wrong with it. Because like I said before, everybody used sand filters back in the 20s and everything else, and they purified the water like that. And there's nothing wrong with it going back into the earth. It will filter it. I don't know what these people, they just think, oh, well, you can't do that. But it can be done. There is no reason why we can't utilize this gray water that is right here, and you're putting it down the L.A. riverbed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Smith would like to respond?
Just a point of information from Mr. Nightingale's knowledge that the City Council ordered that the $30 million he's talking about be put back into infrastructure. It was not to be used for any other purpose, but infrastructure and cutting the cost of the taxpayers of that infrastructure program.
And part of those infrastructure programs are the gray and purple pipe programs as well. We also passed on Wednesday the ordinance to save about $1 billion gallons of water each year with our new low-flow toilets and fixtures, and that should provide more water for everybody as well through conservation. Are there any members who wish to speak on 18? If not, we'll prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If we can go to the special meeting, and we've had a request to take item 24 and 25 out of order. And 24 and 8. You wanted which one forthwith? 20 forthwith. Now that we're there, thank you, Mr. Smith. And I'd like to recognize our Chair of Energy and Environment before we go to public comment cards, Ms. Perry.
Hi. Thanks, Mr. President. I have more of a series of questions that I just wanted to put on the record. So if you're...
Do you want to do the comment cards first then?
Yeah, let's
okay,
just
and then we'll return to you right after that.
Okay.
Dr. Williams, if you'd like to come forward on item number 24. And 24 and 25 together, please. And if you want to speak on both of them at the same time, you can do. You said a minute on each one, so if you want to do 2 minutes, and we can speak on both. Because we're going to be considering them together also.
How many minutes?
You can have up to 4 if you want, but I was just reading your card, so you wanted a minute on each? Is that correct?
Okay, Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. Here we go again. 24. The City Council's motion included a subject called, for those who have already reduced their water usage as much as possible and related matters. You need to have a separate category, perhaps a variance procedure, for those people who are less than 50 gallons per person per day, and they exceed the Tier 1 level. The use of water for large livestock, 500 pounds and above, and horses, is this a necessity? Why not pay as much as required? People choose to keep livestock. People choose to keep pets. People choose where they live within the city of Los Angeles, thank God. However, they must also pay the penalty for such. If it requires more water because you live in the valley rather than Venice, hey, you have to pay the bill. Paying bill in Venice means that you get cooler air, but anyway. What we need is an equitable, zero-sum, revenue-neutral calculation as to who pays for the horses, who pays for the large area private irrigation systems, who pays for the private golf courses, who pays for the private cemeteries. And oh, by the way, the Recreation and Parks Department still has a very large amount of Quimby funds which can be used on capital improvements of the irrigation system, the grass systems, and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker on item 24. And then we have Craig Kessler on item 25 following Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. Good morning. 2 points of order very quickly, sir. I believe you mentioned we're allowed 2 minutes on each one of these items. It's a special meeting, only allowed 2 minutes on a special meeting. I don't know why the city council attorney didn't correct you on that. Also, it would be a real change and a real plus if the people in the council chambers were allowed to hear the committee reports or these reports that you're going to have here before the public comment that was going to be made. And basically, a public comment regarding this water issue. I believe there was a story in the LA Times recently regarding construction of hotels downtown LA and the fact that the hotels aren't bound by any water restrictions. And if that's true, why would they not be bound? And who pays for their usage? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. Craig Kessler is our next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Craig Kessler. I'm Executive Director of the Public Links Golf Association of Southern California. Came down here today to reiterate the golf community's support of the amendments that were executed by the Water and Power Commission at Tuesday afternoon's meetings. As I said then, I'll say again, the golf community and I think the greater recreational community seeks no special treatment and no special exemptions, simply the opportunity to actually exceed the mandates that are being placed upon everyone else in exchange for the flexibility necessary to actually keep the doors open, the parks watered, the cemeteries, those things which require specialized turf management. So I'm not going to take up all of my time to simply reiterate that 100% support. It's going to be a tremendous challenge. This is a challenging time. It's a challenge that the golf community can meet and the golf industry can meet, and we're prepared to do it and prepared to work with DWP and the mandates of this city to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your testimony today. That's our last public comment. We'll return to our Chair of Energy and Environment, Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I know we are taking these two items together, and I wanted to ask my last question first because I think it's important for people who may be listening to hear the answer to this. With the changes and the rate adjustments that are taking place, will there be, and this is for DWP, will there be a dedicated phone line at DWP that people can call to clarify the restrictions that are being imposed as a result of the city's water shortage? And hold my time.
Good morning, Council. My name is Tom Erb, the Director of Water Resources at DWP, and yes, customers can call 1-800-DIAL-DWP if they need to clarify what their prohibited uses are, if they need to clarify what their Tier 1 allotment is. It's 1-800-DIAL-DWP.
Okay, great. And then I think Mr. Smith is going to ask or comment on the livestock allocation and on the medical equipment issues, so I will let him go into that since it emanated from him and his district. With regard to low-income and lifeline program subsidy adjustments, will eligible ratepayers be subject to a 15% discount adjustment, assuming the declared water shortage rate increases to 20% or drops to 10%? And would the discount rate be adjusted accordingly? And if you want, I can break that up.
The discount rate will be adjusted accordingly.
Why don't you say your name for the record?
My name is Gregory Black, and I'm the Director of Budget Rates and Efficiency and Planning at LADWP. And the question is if the degree of water shortage changes to 20% or to 10% from 15% with the discount to the low income rate that we're proposing, would that adjust accordingly? And the answer to that would be yes.
Okay, thank you. I noticed on the proposed ordinance it includes additional council review time of 30 days instead of the 15 days, and I appreciate that for water shortage rate adjustments. Now, will this new standard be applied for all future water shortage rate adjustments?
Yes, it will.
All right. Now, in addition to this new amendment, I also requested that the department provide a new procedure for assessing the status of water shortage rates and whether to continue, adjust, or terminate. Can you tell us what the status is of the language that you're drafting for us?
David Hotchkiss, Assistant City Attorney. Page 3 of the draft ordinance under heading B, it's section 2, subheading B, there's a mandatory obligation on the part of the department to continuously monitor and evaluate projected supplies and demands on a monthly basis, and to keep the management of the city, including the mayor, in the informational loop as to the status of those needs.
Now, I think in committee we talked about that because I think we felt that that wasn't really working, and so we asked for you to enhance your procedure for notification on that. And I recall, I think I was the one who actually asked for new notification language, and I guess I'm going to have to make that today. So while other people are talking, I'll come back and give you some amendment language to just make that a little bit tighter because it wasn't working. In the very simple terms, can you describe the Tier 2 water rate modification and the need to implement it?
Okay. This is going to take a little time.
ID yourself, yeah.
This will take a little time, but I'll go through it.
Just do a synopsis.
The Tier 2 water rate is the Tier 2 fix is what we're calling it, is a modification to our Tier 2 rate to when you look at our Tier 1 rate, the water procurement adjustment is embedded in the rate. With our Tier 1 rate, the water procurement adjustment is added to the Tier 1 rate. The water procurement adjustment is for purchased water, recycled water, and demand-side management charges. So anytime that charge increases, it's added on top of our Tier 1 rate. Whereas with our Tier 2 rate, the water procurement adjustment charge is embedded within the rate. So as the water procurement adjustment charge increases, it basically it's
Excuse me for just a second.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it like this. Pretend you're the consumer and that you're not working for DWP, and try explaining it like that.
Okay, I've been trying this for about a month now.
Pretend we're just regular folks, not public employees.
Okay, let me put it in an illustrative manner. Okay? If our Tier 1 rate, if the base rate for Tier 1 was $1 and the water procurement adjustment charge was $1, our total Tier 1 rate would be $2. If our Tier 2 rate, if the base rate was $2 and the water procurement adjustment charge was $1, then our Tier 2 rate would be a total of $3. Now, in the case of our current rate structure, if the purchased water charge increases to $2, the Tier 1 rate would become $3. The Tier 2 rate, because the water procurement adjustment charge is embedded within the rate, would basically stay at $3 because the $2 would be included within the Tier 2 rate.
Okay, now,
It would be
regular...
included in the base rate, yes. So
Go ahead.
did I make it clear?
That's better. Okay, so you're still speaking as just a regular person, and you're explaining to us the water procurement adjustment, or the WPA, that is not included in the Tier 2 rates. I believe that's correct.
It's embedded within the Tier 2 base rate.
Okay, so explain, as a regular person, the difference between the water procurement adjustment that is added to a tier and the WPA that is embedded in the language, and what's the problem associated with this difference?
Well, the problem that's associated with the water procurement adjustment being embedded within a tier rate, within the base rate, is that the base rates are primarily recover costs that we need to pay for our operation and maintenance expenses. And with water procurement being in the Tier 2 base rate, as it increases, it slowly erodes the amount of revenue that we have, that we collect for operation and maintenance expenses. So what we're proposing is to remove the water procurement adjustment from the Tier 2 base rate and add it to it so that as purchased water increases, it doesn't erode the base rates that we have for operation and maintenance expenses.
So, if I'm just listening to this, I don't know too much about it. Sounds to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, so the cost of the water has increased.
Yes, it has.
Okay, so the cost of the water has increased. So if this adjustment is made, the impact it has to Tier 1 water users is basically an increase in the purchase of the water.
Well, actually, it doesn't have any impact on the Tier 1 water users. It only has an impact on Tier 2 water use.
And is there a certain percentage increase that you foresee for a subset of ratepayers?
If we were approved to make the adjustment to the rate today, the way that we're requesting the structure to be changed, the impact to the ratepayers would be 6 additional cents for every 100 gallons of water in Tier 2. Additional 100 gallons of water in Tier 2. So it's a relatively small amount.
Mr. President, I'm going to come back on my language for the city attorney, so I will stop for now.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. We have Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Smith, Mr. Zine, and Mr. Koretz, starting with Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Question to the Department of Water and Power on the first point, going along the lines of what Ms. Perry was trying to get the public to understand about these rates. If a customer uses no water, how much more would they pay today than they would have a year ago for using the same amount of water? No water. It's a trick question. If they use no water, how much more would they be paying in their bill now if they use no water a year ago? Zero. It's a trick. What's the answer? Zero. Exactly. Now, if a customer uses a little bit of water, would they see a little bit of an increase in their bill?
No. They would still see no increase.
Okay. If a customer used a lot more water than they used last year, will they see an increase in their bill?
Yes.
So isn't one of the objectives here is for people to start paying more attention to their bill and how much they're paying and start to realize and think, wait a minute, maybe I ought to fix that leaky faucet. Maybe I ought to look closer at my sprinkler system. Maybe I ought to start reading up or something or getting free advice where there is free advice from water conservation organizations and not-for-profits, etc., and the department offers information and pamphlets, etc., on how to conserve water. Isn't that part of the objective?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Now, questions to number 25, to Department of Recreation and Parks. You Department of Recreation and Parks is asking that they be looked at a bit differently than the rest of the customers in the city of Los Angeles.
Not totally correct. We support this ordinance completely, the modifications too. We want to be included in the ordinance. All we're asking is that we allow technology to be used.
So what you're saying is you support the requirement and the expectation the Department of Recreation and Parks will reduce its water usage by at least 15%, because that's what Phase 3 is expecting. Phase 3 is expecting to get a result where your average water user, big, small, large, or what have you, that we get everybody to figure out ways to reduce their consumption on a month-to-month basis by at least 15%. Isn't that the objective of Phase 3?
That's how we view it. We're committed to meet or exceed that 15% goal. In fact, the numbers that we are getting from DWP, the water people, we are in excess of 20% year-to-date from last year.
Okay. Department of Water and Power, when did Phase 3 kick in?
June 1st.
June 1st. Speak up.
June 1st.
June 1st of 2009.
Yes.
So close to just shy of 2 months ago, it kicked in for everybody. But how long ago did the Recreation and Parks Department start their conservation efforts?
We started well over 5 years ago to begin really in earnest looking at water conservation. We partnered with the Department of Water and Power to replace irrigation systems throughout our park system, more recycled water. We stopped watering 26 days a year just on our own to save 10%. So we've been engaged in water conservation, energy conservation long before this ordinance was enacted.
Okay, so right now, as we speak, how much savings of water have you experienced since you've started this process?
If you look at raw numbers and the fact that we added 414 new acres of parkland, and you go back to 2007 calendar year, we're well in excess of 30%, almost 40%. This is raw numbers.
Okay, so basically your main discourse and reason for wanting the Recreation and Parks to have its own way of watering its plants, etc., its outdoor plants and grass, is because you figured out a way to meet and exceed the objective of reducing the water usage at Recreation Parks beyond the 15%, which is what Department of Water and Power is hoping everybody does.
That's correct, but I want to stress the fact we did this with the Department of Water and Power. Our department could not have done this without the financial and technical support in implementing the smart irrigation. They're making a tremendous investment in reclaimed water throughout the city. And then our own staff, many of them are sitting behind me. One of them is on a furlough day, I'm going to point out today. But it's critical that he come to this meeting and, if needed, testify. We're developing a comprehensive strategic plan for the City of Los Angeles on water conservation that takes in everything in account, not just the water we put on the ground, but the water we retain after it rains. So we're proud of what we're doing together. We should be celebrating this. What we're doing in the city is groundbreaking, and not only groundbreaking today, these legacy systems will continue to give benefits to the city and citizens long after all of us are out of city service.
And the golf courses, are you using drinkable water on all your golf courses?
No. 5 of the 13 golf courses are currently on reclaimed water. The other 13 will be going on reclaimed water by the year 2012. And again, this is an investment the Department of Water and Power is making for the citizens of Los Angeles.
If you allow the grass and trees to die as they were last week, in this 100-plus degree weather, especially in the San Fernando Valley, would it cost the taxpayers more money in the end? Would you have to replace it with taxpayer-paid seed and sod?
There's no question. You're looking at tens of millions of dollars just in sod replacement. We would have to use more water to keep new sod or new seed germinating. So without modifying the current ordinance, telling us to keep within the 20% water use, yes, we would bankrupt the city just on what it would cost to reseed our parks.
Okay. Thank you very much. My last point, Mr. President, is that I think it's very important for us to understand that the Department of Water and Power has its responsibility, but for example, Recreation and Parks has a responsibility beyond just the amount of water it uses, but actually protecting our city assets. And that grass and those trees are city assets, open to all the public and anybody who wants to go there. And I just think that people need to look at the Department of Water and Power as an example, a positive example. If we had every homeowner and business, large and small, in Los Angeles acting responsibly like the Department of Water and Power, we wouldn't have a Phase 3 right now. Because if we had reduced water usage by 20-30% already in 2005 and 6 and 7 and 8, we wouldn't have a Stage 3 need, because we would have our consumption so low that we would be still monitoring it, still paying attention to the snowpacks and all those kinds of things, but we would be nowhere near the consumption we are today. And that's why we have a Stage 3, is because too many of us, including myself, are not saving 20, 30, 40% of our water consumption like the Department of Recreation and Parks. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mr. Smith, Mr. Zine, Mr. Koretz, and Ms. Hahn. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. And briefly for Dr. Williams, the question about horses came up. I would like to point out that it's easy to turn the water off to your pool. It's easy to turn the water off to your landscaping. You turn the water off to your horses, they will die. It's not a matter that we want to really be in the position of doing. And I point out there's less than 1,500 horses in the city of LA, as best we know. So this is a small item. Let me get to the issues rather. First, for Rec and Parks. I put in a rain barrel at my house a year ago, got 63 gallons of free water when it rained. I had enough water to water all my landscape, my small pots and stuff until March of this year, using free water. As I traveled through Spain and Mexico in recent years, there are cisterns all over the place. Have we explored the ability to put in cisterns, water, rainwater, catchment basins, whatever, in our parks to store water, which is free, and use it into the hotter months?
We have done even better. Okay, what I want to tell you is we have cisterns in Sun Valley. That was the first one we put in. We just had a dedication over at Mar Vista Park for a stormwater run. Every single park we designed today, Rio de Los Angeles being the number one, is 100% groundwater retention. Every time you see a synthetic turf field put in, that's designed 100% runoff retention. So we're meeting every known standard today, and we're using best management practices at the front end of design. And to me, it's not a question of green parks or drinking water today. We can have both. Today, we can do both with technology and through best management practices.
And on the back end, for those that are existing parks, are we looking at doing installations as we do gray water piping, et cetera, when you do that as well?
That's correct. Currently, we've retrofitted 33% of our parks. You can see behind me Ramon Barajas and Dana Valdez. We're doing a very aggressive plan to put in smart irrigation and recycle water. We need to know that we're not just saving water, we're saving lives, and that I'm hiring youth from the community to do this work, to get the job skills, to go into the workforce. I'm waiting on some stimulus money. If I get it, I can hire 70 more youths tomorrow to do this work.
Great, very good. I'm glad to hear those answers. To the Department of Water and Power, when can we expect the changes for medical use, horse allocation, et cetera, to go into effect?
At this point, we're expecting that they would go into effect probably December 1st.
December 1st?
Yes.
Why so late?
Would you like to explain the 218 notification, David?
The David Hotchkiss, City Attorney's Office. The ordinance that's before you that encompasses the modifications of the rate ordinance, including Tier 2, and the various exceptions that are built into the ordinance, all affect the potential rates that the customers are going to pay. Because it's a water rate, it's a property-related fee, and under Prop 218, there must be a 45-day notice to the ratepayers, and that must take place before there could be a final vote by this body. And because it's a rate ordinance change, there'll be a 30-day period before it becomes effective.
But 218 would only kick in if there's a rate increase. You're saying there wasn't going to be a rate increase except for those people who violate the policy, right?
we need to draw a distinction here between the drought or the water conservation plan ordinance that's before you and the rate ordinance. The rate ordinance modification of Tier 2, depending on the consumer's practices, could have an increase in their Tier 2 consumption, and as a result, their rate will go up, their bill will go up, and Prop 218 notice is required whenever there's a potentiality of a rate increase going into effect.
So these changes will have no effect until after the summer season when you really need these rate adjustments.
Yes. Well, they'll be going forward in time through the next hot season, that's correct. But as of right now, we are constrained by the constitutional mandates of Prop 218.
And there's nothing that can be done to help people. I had a woman call me and prompted my motion on this a few weeks ago, whose daughter was in an auto accident years ago. She's vegetative state. She soils the bed she sleeps in 4 to 5, 6 times a day. They must change those sheets. That's their problem. They're automatically kicked in the next rate. There's no way around rate 2. Talked to a gentleman just yesterday who called my staff. I didn't talk to him. He's on chemotherapy for cancer. His doctor says you must flush your toilet 2 or 3 times after using it because of the chemotherapy radioactive in your system. So those people, you're just saying tough?
No, we're not saying tough. I think at this point, the legal ramifications of what we're facing as far as trying to get the rates modifications implemented, we've had numerous internal discussions as to how to overcome those hurdles. From the standpoint of customers who are going to be affected negatively by the rates that we have in place right now, our customer service division actually has a customer relations department. And customers can call that customer relations department, and the DWP is more than happy or more than willing to try to work with customers to work out ways that we can help to mitigate their impacts until we can get these rates in place.
You're saying you're going to try and help them mitigate. I don't know how you can tell that woman to tell her daughter not to urinate in bed. How do you mitigate those kind of problems? I would suggest to you that we show compassion for those people that have those kind of needs, and I bet you it's not more than a few hundred people, or at the most 1,000, whose rates will not be going up even under a 218 deal if we say we're exempting them from this ordinance or giving them some benefit, and that they be allowed to go forward with the rate break for the medical reasons that you've put forth in the ordinance drafting, that you prove to us you have a need that is medically related, and that we show compassion to the city and say, your rates are not going to go up, so you should be exempted then from the 218 requirement, and let them go forward on those type of people.
I understand the sentiments and I understand the ideas that you're submitting, but the problem is that there is a constitutional mandate that the rate structure itself be submitted to the ratepayers for consideration. If there is a majority protest by the ratepayers of the water system, then no modification of the ordinance can take place. So there is a constitutional schedule of time and a procedure to be followed, and, as a legal advisor to the city, I must advise you that for you to have a valid modification as proposed, it must go out to the ratepayers for their consideration, and they must be given the 45-day notice.
And Mr. Kotchis, I don't argue that point. I don't like it. I think that for people to understand, 218 was voted on by the people of California. Sometimes when you pass laws like on the ballot box, they're not well thought out. This is one of those cases. I am suggesting to you that the handful of people, the very small group of people who will get a benefit from this will not object to the 218 vote and not put us in jeopardy of a lawsuit. I don't think any one of those people are going to sue us for getting the benefit of the reduction for them. And I would ask you to, as an attorney, find a way that we can legally protect those people in extreme need who are at no fault of their own, being subjected to extreme rate increases if we go forward, that should not be put in that category, and that nobody is going to sue us over that issue. There's not going to be a person in the city that will sue us because we've shown compassion to medical cases that need additional water use.
Councilmember Smith, I think I just had a discussion with our customer service department, and customers can call in to the department, and we can actually make adjustments for them going forward. But it's on an individual case basis. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I get whatever information I need to all the council members, stating exactly what your constituents would have to do to be able to call in to get these exemptions.
Okay, so that would be the people that follow the rules you set forward, that they show they have a medical need, they show what the equipment requirements are, whatever their requirements are, you would work those out for those. And it's a very small group of people out of 4 million people.
Well, I will point out for the record that the department already has in place lifeline provisions that are designed to address the situation, and of course the low-income provisions that are already in the ordinance. To the extent that these folks either have a medical necessity, which would fall into the lifeline, or have other financial limitations, those can be addressed through the existing structure.
Okay.
But they should be.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. And it's important for everyone to know, because in every one of our districts, we have those heart-rending cases that we're going to deal with. My time is up. I'm going to push my button. I had a lot more questions. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is the point to be learned from this. This was a meat-X approach to a problem. We needed water conservation. We passed a rush ordinance, and now we're going back and thinking of all the problems we created with rushing to judgment. We shouldn't make these kind of rush decisions in the future. I thought we'd learn that with Prop B and a few other things. I guess we haven't, but in the perfect world, in public policy, you don't make a decision looking at an ordinance and writing it up in a week's time and passing it and expecting it not to have major consequences. So I hope in the future we'll say no to these rush items like this and think them out a little better. And I will talk later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
Thank you, Madam President. You mentioned calling in to find out what tier you're on. Why don't we put that on the bill? This was brought up when Mr. Nahai was here a couple months ago. Why don't we tell the consumer what their tier level is instead of calling the Department of Water and Power? It seems very simple to put the tier you're in, what your allocation is, instead of having them call, and I'm sure the lines are busy, I'm sure there's other things people need to do. Why don't we make it real simple for the consumer who's paying a lot of money for water and power? Why can't we do that?
Councilmember Zine, that's an IT-related issue, and from the standpoint of the department, when you look at our IT systems, they're very antiquated, and it may seem that changes that are relatively simple, and a lot of times there's a lot of things that I like to do as a manager at the department that I think are relatively simple, but as far as the implementation from an information and technology standpoint, they become very complicated and they become priority issues. And I think what's happening at the department is that when the issues that are related to billing, and these issues have come up a lot as to what we should put on our bills, how we should design our bills, how they should, be structured, it's becoming a very complicated issue as far as how we're going to implement that. I think once we reach a point where we get our new customer information system in, I think that all of these problems will be resolved, but it's more of a priority issue and a resource issue and an issue of the fact that our system is over 30 years old.
Well, we put a lot of information on the water and power bill. We put information on all the other charges, for sewer and sanitation charge, for equipment charge for sanitation. We put a lot of information on there. It seems logical, since the consumer is already paying a lot of money, that we could structure something to make it consumer-friendly, that they would be able to look at that bill and say, this is my tier, this is what I need to do, and I have to cut back, this is what I need to do to cut back. Because right now, they're in the dark. All of a sudden, they get a bill, and they're watering Monday and Thursday, not between 9 and 4, and their bill is higher. Oh my God, I didn't know what my tier level was. We need to be a customer-friendly operation. We charge these people a lot of money for water and power. We charge more for the water going out in the sewer than we charge for the water coming in, and that may change. So we may be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So the IT is an important issue. Mr. Nahai was here when I asked this question months ago, and I was under the impression that we were going to change that and give the consumer the information so they would be able to look at that bill and understand what it is. When you get your credit card statement, it says where you went, what you spent, the date, time, etc. We just need to get our priorities set, and I don't think the priorities of water and power are really in focus for the customer. Maybe it's in focus for something not the customer. because the customer's paying more and more, and we start these different tiers, and in the valley where I represent 105 temperature, those folks may be using more water and not cognizant until they get the bill, and then they're going to start screaming when the $5 and $6 and $7 and $1,000 bills because of the air conditioning that's used, because of the water that's used, because of this extreme temperature. If you go to the beach, you don't have that problem, but in the valley you do. And the valley folks don't feel they're getting fair representation and getting what they need from the Department of Water and Power. And that needs to be corrected. Now, this gentleman who came up here, do you remember the conversation when we talked about putting the tier level on the bill?
Yes, I do, Councilmember.
Okay, so what happened from then until now?
What happened from then until now is it was basically a two-pronged approach. We are not only much more able to get information off the Customer Information Service, and I certainly do want to say Mr. Black is actually correct. We're very antiquated in our customer service system, but what we've done is we've put a middleware into that tool that allows us to extract that data. We've ordered new printers because printers were our major concern. We have new printers that will go online in approximately 4 to 5 months that will allow us to extract the tiered information, graph information, and other things about a customer's individual usage over time, which will give them a much clearer understanding of their usage. That will be happening very soon. We had an RFP out. The response to that RFP is back for those mainframe printers, and we will be having them online post-haste, moving quickly.
So in the near future, the consumer will get the bill, look at it, and not have to worry about calling Water and Power and waiting online until an operator is available.
Absolutely. We're also offering it on the web. It is available through the web right now, that if you put in your CAN number, your access number into the web, you can get that tiered information right now. So you can get that quickly and effortlessly. You can also do it Tuesday of this week when we went into a new phase on our interactive voice response system. You will be able to get that in an automated fashion as well. So we're hitting it in 3 different areas so that they can get that tier. But as a bottom line, anytime a customer reaches us, and our average speed of answer right now is about 21 seconds, anytime they talk to a customer service rep, they can get that tier and that rate information.
So I just want to make it the most efficient for the consumer. So when they get jammed on that number 2 or 3 tier, they'll know, and they'll be able to look, I messed up. We need to cut back on our water that we're using for whatever purpose, whether they're filling the pool or their spa or just wasting water or not fixing their sprinklers that are leaking. So it's just information to the consumers. How many subscribers do we have?
In what areas?
Residential.
Residential, we have approximately 1.2 million customers and approximately 600,000 water customers.
So for every one of those individuals to call in to ask that is going to be a drain on the resources. It's a lot easier to just show it on a piece of paper.
It's a lot easier, absolutely.
Okay.
And again,
so 4 months we should have it in place.
I would say 4 to 6 months. We are dealing with information technology on this, and the CIO has already moved forward in this area.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Koretz is our next speaker.
Yeah, I just had one question. I know we've addressed the hillside burn areas. My concern, the concern that's been expressed to me by a lot of my constituents, is that we may be creating future hillside burn areas by not addressing the high fire danger areas and giving them more of an exemption. Have we looked at this, and what are we doing about it?
We have had a number of discussions with the Los Angeles Fire Department brush clearance unit, and their advice is to clear brush rather than irrigate it. And they provide lots of information. They perform inspections, but they're really encouraging homeowners and residents to really clear their brush. They don't believe that irrigation is the solution for those types of issues.
Well, I'm not sure I would agree with that. Intuitively, I would think you would both try to clear it, but you'd also try to keep your landscaped areas from getting too dry. So intuitively, this seems like we're creating more of a fire danger than we need to. And I would like us to at least look more seriously at giving an exemption to some of the hillside areas that I think we may be creating more fires for by taking this approach. I mean, one or two major fires could certainly wipe out a lot of the gains that we make by not watering and then having to blow it all in one day with a major fire. I know we try our best with brush clearance. I don't think we're perfect. And those imperfections, I think, exacerbated by inadequate watering, may just be asking for real trouble. So I'd certainly like to see us look at that more seriously in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. So we kind of, 24 and 25, we're dealing with two issues here, raising the rates of Tier 2, and then kind of tweaking the ordinance to allow for some hardship cases, and hopefully we certainly take into account what Greg Smith brought to our attention, which I agree. I don't think any sane person would object to us making some allowances for those particular cases. And in terms of, rec and parks, and I'll tell you, initially I had some concerns as well, particularly because of the public perception. As you heard one of the speakers out in Van Nuys, wait a minute, my lawn is going brown as well, and I have people coming to me all the time saying their lawns are dying. So how do we, but I'll tell you, in Tom's committee, it was a very compelling case to me in terms of the maintenance of our parks, number one, as well as what you've already done with your smart sprinklers that can sense whether it's a good day or a bad day to water. If it's windy, they don't come on. If it's a particular humidity is there, they don't come on. I heard Mike on the radio yesterday explaining that. So I think that is a good case for how you've already figured out how to be smart waterers. I also was very compelled by the case that this is not just about our parks looking brown. This is about our parks dying, and the tons of money we would eventually have to spend, apparently, to reseed those lawns in our parks so that kids have a safe place to play. I was also very compelled by the idea of losing some of our mature trees as a result of this drastic cut in watering. So some of those things I feel like are completely appropriate to tweak the ordinance for our larger parks. But this is going to be a hard case to make to allot some of the average homeowners, particularly people who have large acreage and would feel sort of the same way. So how do we say that it's okay for us to do it, but it's not okay for the average person to see their lawns and maybe even some of their trees die as a result of this?
May I address this?
Yes.
I became commission president in October 2007, and the first commission meeting I went to, the first resolution we adopted was to ask the management to report to us promptly on water-saving steps. And Mike Shull, our superintendent of planning, gave a report 2 months later that, to our admiration, indicated, as General Manager Muckery has said, that the department had already taken very substantial steps, not only in terms of actual numbers, gallons of water saved, but in terms of organizational steps and infrastructure steps to save water. And having seen that, though, we still adopted that it shall be an imperative of the department to not only exceed the numbers required across the city of all of us, private and public, but to continue to move toward 100% smart irrigation and 100% recycled water in our golf courses. We're 1/3 of the way on the smart irrigation, which, as you said, if you move away toward particular assigned days of the week, not only are you not getting the benefit, you're turning that off. It's a step back, not a step forward.
Right.
But we expect by 2012 to be at the 100% on both those goals. We've kept this in front of us, and we're satisfied that management sees it as one of our imperatives. The saving of almost 40% in the last 2 years speaks to that. But going to your points, we've got 3 other imperatives that we follow and that we pursue in everything we do in recreation and parks. And one of them is to be a provider of service. Unlike the private homeowner, we're providing a public service, and we're providing it at a time where not only this
water shortage, but also this economy, has made it all the more important that we have something that may still not exist in your front yard, and the ability to use these parks. The other thing we're doing, as you mentioned, is we're stewards of a public asset, which puts us in a different category than a private homeowner. And as stewards of a public asset, we cannot lose the mature trees. We cannot lose the square miles of parkland. And then the fourth imperative that's on all of us, private and public, but particularly sensitive to us here in the city, and that's the health and safety. When we lose the turf shrinks back 3 or 4 inches. All the sprinkler heads are suddenly exposed to any child playing. People aren't normally playing soccer in their front lawns. They're playing soccer all over our parks. So we are differently situated. As a homeowner, I understand homeowners' pain, but we're in a different case. And we're very much grateful to your consideration of this fine-tuning of the ordinance and hopeful that you'll pass it.
Thank you. And again, and I know you were telling me earlier that we already have signage I'm assuming our golf courses that talk about this. I know we're in tough times, but let's update some of our signs at our parks too. This park saves X amount of gallons of water every week by I really think it's important for everybody that jogs through the park, who drops their kids off for a program, the neighbors that can see it. Let's update some of those big, bold letters. We're doing our part to save water, and here's how. You guys can be creative, but I do think that is something that everyone should see, so that we don't have the perception, like the speaker earlier said, that somehow we can do whatever we want, we're above the law. The fact of the matter is, not only are you saying that this makes more sense, but you're really saving water through the way you're doing this. And I think that's really important to people. We need to over-communicate. That is my thing in this city. Over-communicate, like Dennis said. Let's make it easy for people to understand what we're asking of them, but let's make it easy for them to understand what we are doing as well. I don't know why we're always so shy about signs. Make them big, make them bold, let people know what's going on. I think now's the time to do that.
The answer to that is absolutely yes, and as soon as possible. As you mentioned, where we're using recycled water on golf courses, we have the signs, but where we've got smart irrigation, we ought to have it too. It would infuriate me to be on my burned-out front lawn, look across the street, and see the sprinklers going.
Exactly.
I know how people would feel. They should be told the reason that ought to be so.
Thank you. And then on the other issue of raising the Tier 2 rates, my question, of course, will be, again, about communication. How we communicate with neighborhood councils. Have they been a part? I understand you held a very informative meeting yesterday, I believe, with council staff on this issue. Was the same kind of meeting held with neighborhood councils, particularly with the MOU that DWP has entered into with neighborhood councils in the city?
Councilmember Hahn, we have been having ongoing meetings with the neighborhood councils for several months.
So they would not be surprised that this is going to happen?
They should not be.
Okay, but according to 218, you still have to have 45 days from when we hear it. Is that right? Before when we vote on it?
Before there's a final vote, David Hotchkiss, City Attorney, before there's a final vote by this body, there must be the requisite 45-day notice to the ratepayers, and the department needs a block of time to prepare the documents and prepare the mailers, because there are approximately 600,000 notices that must go out.
Okay, and again, I still want to make sure that the neighborhood council, the MOU group, has been fully updated on what it is that we're planning to do.
Yes, they have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Our next speaker is Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been listening. We've all been listening. My community's been listening. The reporters have been listening, and everybody's trying to figure out where we go from here. I think what Mr. Corrett said is exactly my feelings as a Hillside council member. Some of my folks are very, very worried about being able to keep certain parts of their property from getting so dry that it would be a fire waiting to happen. Others are very upset about some of their neighbors that won't thin out some of their pine trees that are a huge fear. Fire department goes is sort of too gentle about it. And so the brush clearing concept is not necessarily effectively enforced around some folks' homes. But those are the two hillside issues for me. It becomes almost counterintuitive, as Mr. Koretz, or intuitive for us to want to keep things from getting too brittle and too risky for a fire. I've had 2 fires in my district in the last year and a half, and thank God for the fire department. We put them out, but it could go like that. I could lose half of my hillside community. So I really think we need to visit in a little bit on the water policies about areas that are in wooded areas, canyons and hillsides. Does anybody want to respond? We didn't really hear much of a response to Mr. Koretz's, which we're joined at the hip. We got those mountains. Actually, everybody's got it from the Palisades to Eagle Rock. They straddle through this great city. Please comment on that. Hold my time. Thank you.
We will sit down with the fire department brush clearance unit and see if we can't, figure this out more. We did an analysis of the area that's defined as the brush clearance area and determined that it uses 12% of the city's entire water use. So it's a lot of water going to that area. So providing a blanket exemption of that area could prolong our phases of conservation, or perhaps even potentially push us up into higher phases. So, but we will work and see if there's something that we can do to try to maybe drill into that a little bit.
And I'd like to report back as quickly as possible. We are into the fire season now. The days are getting hotter and drier, and it will go on for the next 90 to 120 days. And I just, God forbid, we have one of those catastrophes. So I'd like, as quickly as possible, a call back. Secondly, I am actually sending a letter to a group of constituents, I don't want to mention the exact area, with a strong mandate from me on my council letterhead telling them to thin out some of their pine tree growth. They don't want to hear it, and the firefighters are a little too polite to some of these wealthy folks who think that they run the world all the time, but their firing areas are dangerous to all of us. So I would like to get a better understanding of how more effective. So I've said to one leader, constituent leader, I'd like very much to send a strong letter, since the fire department wasn't strong enough on that issue, okay? So I'd like that back too. And the last thing is just a good story about how we can deal with it. Measure O. Measure O, yesterday, I did a ribbon cutting in Mar Vista Park, where once again, we have a 270-acre watershed that flows in there. And we're going to clean that water before it goes into the ocean, okay? But we're going to save some of that water to water the park. Now, that is water we would never have gotten any other way. It would have been filthy, gone in the ocean, killed a fish, stop our swimming. And that particular water strategy is the ultimate, because it's taking recycled water and using it in the parks. And Mr. Muckley was there. If he could make a comment on that as well.
Yes, Propo is just one of the things that's going to benefit us historically forever. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize the Bureau of Sanitation and Bureau of Engineering, who have just done a great job in doing this. And again, I've committed our parks to be a central point of the Propo mitigation. We should be using our parkland to capture this water.
Yeah, and it is effective. It is the right thing to do. The community loves it. We all love it. It was like a huge win-win. We had a whole bunch of kids sitting in front of us, and they really got to see something. Enrique's right over there. Look, you're shaking hands. Come on up for a quick second. Just come up for a quick second on this. No. Come on, real quick. Sanitation organized this and is in the process of making it happen. If you could just do a 1 minute on the Mar Vista experience and where we are as a city overall with your great department in doing this kind of recycling.
Thank you, Councilmember Rosenthal and Enrique Zaldivar. It was a great day yesterday with the dedication of that one project. We have now made one more advancement with regards to not just capturing and cleaning the water, but now making use of it. And I know John's very happy about that, as will DWP. So this was a $3.5 million investment, thanks to the Council for Propo. We were able to leverage it with stimulus money, $1.6 million of stimulus money for this one particular project. It's a great effort for the city.
Yeah, and I just want to say to the viewer voter out there, you passed Measure O and gave us $500 million to actually do these kinds of things, and we're reaping the benefit of it right now. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Weston is our next speaker.
Thank you, Madam President and members. And Bill, I'll say to you, there's a park in the district that I'm fortunate enough to represent, West Side Park, where Rec and Park, sanitation and engineering have got together, and they're doing something very similar to that, where we will use that water to water the park. But I wanted to say a little bit about, piggyback a little bit on what Janice Hahn said. The parks were here before we got here, and we need to make sure that we leave them for the individuals that will follow us. I think we have a moral obligation to creatively do the best we can. But to two of my favorite guys, Barry and to John, I want you to just kind of walk me through, again, when you started your conservation program, how it works, and then I know in your department and your commission, you guys just sit around thinking. So what are you thinking about that you haven't done yet that is exciting? Because, I mean, that's the way you operate, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Council Member. First off, when did I start personally getting involved in energy and water conservation? When I was the general manager of GSD. What happened was, when I came to Rec and Parks, now I could do something about it. I had direct control on what we did with our infrastructure to save water. GSD has no clout against any water use. So we developed a plan. How can we do this? From swimming pools to splash pads, to what we put on the ground, what we retain, our lakes, our golf courses. We looked at ways 5 years ago. How can we start saving this precious resource while managing our city resources? So we just didn't come up overnight. A reporter asked me the other day, did you just wake up on this 2-day-a-week watering? I said, no, we've been doing this for 5 years. We knew the current ordinance would not work. It could not possibly work for a public park. Now, we are committed to save water. We've demonstrated we're saving water. And what we're doing now is we're totally reorganizing my department. In one of my budget requests, you authorized me to put in another position. We're putting that position in, doing nothing but advanced planning work on water and power. And I think what we're doing now is we're well in excess of 20%. When Councilmember Perry had this come into council about 2.5 years ago, I said, give me 3 years, I'll give you 25%. We're there. I can guarantee you probably another 10% on top of that. If we do it right, if we do it smart. You've all entrusted me to manage. All I've asked you any time I've come here, hold me accountable, but allow me to manage. Arbitrarily making some of these rules make it very difficult for any general manager to manage. So under the modification, which we support DWP, we understand we live in a desert, we can do this. We can do this right now today going forward, and I really want to praise DWP, because without their support, we would not be in this position today. And I know there's part of the other question about what we've done as a commission and what the commission president has forced us to think for going forward.
We have found that the overall plan has a host of elements that are ongoing things that need to be done, Councilmember West. And we look for every opportunity to have an artificial turf soccer field, or any other kind of sports field. Artificial turf. Artificial turf is good for us in a host of ways. It doubles the utilization of the field. It's almost as though you doubled the land you've got. But at the same time, it's a real water saver. We look at the plans that the Department of Planning within the department has come up with in terms of low water use planting. Any new non-turf planting, bed planting, is low water use. We're not putting in any high water use plants, and haven't been for some time. There's a long list of things that that are being done, and each one of them they go in descending order in terms of the percentage of water saving. It's turf where the big water use is. It's turf, and that's why artificial turf is important, and it's hard for us to get it. An artificial turf soccer field is a $900,000 investment on average, and basically we can get it with donated money. But if we can find other funds, if we can find stimulus funds, any kind of funds that'll let us do that, we'd love to proliferate them all over town.
Now, you know, at Rancho, we just put in an artificial turf for the football field and a brand-new track, and plans are being designed now to do the same with the soccer field that's there. So when you have these synthetic turf fields, how big of a savings is that actually?
It's a tremendous savings. I have Mike Scholl here. He could come up, but there's a number of savings to it. It's playable surface forever. So you have about a 10-year lifespan where we don't have to reseed, we don't have to maintain. All we do is basically sweep it. We don't put water on it. We don't put fertilizers on it. So if you're thinking about the environmental impact, I don't even know how to put a value on that. On the flip side, like I said earlier, our designs are 100% groundwater retention. So on those days when it does water, that just doesn't go in the storm drains. So Enrique doesn't have to worry about what we're doing at sanitation. That water is coming right back into the ground. So, Mike, do you have numbers of what the actual dollars? I can tell you the payback just on water savings, we estimate about 6.5 to 7 years for each turf field. But we don't take all the other intangibles. The real impact for you and your community with the amount of people you have wanting to use these playable surfaces, you can't put a value on it. It's 7 days a week. You could literally play 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A normal turf field, maybe 3 weeks max of continuous play, and then we have to take it out of service for another 4 or 5 weeks. It's just, these fields work, they're great, we love them.
Okay, last question. How many of these fields do we have within the Rec and Park system, and is the football field at Rancho the first synthetic turf in the Rec and Park history?
It's a
football field.
It most assuredly is the first football field we put in. We have a number of artificial turf fields. It's difficult to count now because what we've done in Rec and Parks, I no longer am the only one putting in these fields. What we do is if you come in, whether it be a skate park, whether it be a turf field, you come in and you say, we have a donor, we want to do it. Mike and I and the commission come out, we give you a right of entry. In less than a month, you can have this built. Now, I'm not criticizing anybody in the city, including myself. It used to take us 2 or 3 years from the time somebody came to us to the time we had the ribbon cutting to open that field.
Well, we have the the Dodger field at the Seoul Park, Olympic Seoul Park, and we have one Lafayette. Don't we have a soccer? That I think was that Nike?
The Nike LA84 at Lafayette. We have it on Riverside Drive. We have it. We're putting one at Whitsett Field in CD2. We have it at Mar Vista Park. We have a number of synthetic turf fields throughout the city. We're doing a mix of both, full-scale fields and these little Futsalido stadiums.
Yeah, we're the one that we're going to do at Rancho is kind of in between.
That's correct.
Let me add an answer to your question. Councilmember Wesson. We're presently at 12 synthetic sports fields across the city. Our goal by December 2012 is to increase that to 20. When we are at 20, we estimate our water savings in gallons will be 5.4 million a year, water saved because of those 20 fields. I'll also add that we're looking at every step of the operation, everywhere, including the golf courses. So even though we have an objective by 2012, which we think we'll meet with DWP's help, to have all the golf courses, all 13, on recycled water, it's important that we save that water too, because as DWP has told us, we will use up the limit of recycled water. So there are steps taken in places like Palm Springs that lead the way, and we're looking at what they do, and we will be making amendments in fairways and so on that don't in any way impact the quality of our excellent courses, but can save some water.
Well, really, this is the last question. I mean, our golf courses generate money for us, and one of the reasons why people play there is because you go out for 4 or 5 hours in a nice environment. So it makes sense to me that we do everything that we can to protect a money maker. About how much, John, do we get off of our golf courses, or Barry?
Our revenues in excess of $13 million comes back from the play into our coffers to go to Rec and Parks General Fund. We use that to offset equity programs throughout the city.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to congratulate you for all the hard work, and these are great case examples of how the city is changing and responding, and it's great to see these silos that once existed now breaking down, and the convergence between water and power, through sanitation, recreation and parks, and their leadership. But I think there is areas we can still improve upon. And one example is at a construction site, there was about 144,000 gallons per day being dumped out into the street to make room for a construction site. This construction site was at an area we had a high water table. And this happens every day in Los Angeles. The challenge and emotion that I've introduced today, but I wanted to ask you, when you look at the fact that per day we could have generated water for 50 households, if you look at the average of 2,500 gallons on the average per day is what we use, and that's on the average. So when we ask to look at this creativity and breaking out of these silos, we have to get to a place where we understand through a map where the high water tables exist. Because right now, all they need is a permit. We don't deal with how much is being pumped out, how much is being contained, how much is being diverted to the gray pipe that allows us to recycle this into our green areas. None of that exists right now. So the motion is about methods using current technology and dealing with these construction issues without imposing upon the construction or development in of itself. But there's this connectivity that's still very loose, and I'm wondering if during your deliberations and your discussions, are issues like that being addressed, or are we just kind of like putting out fires right now and dealing with emergency issues? Are we within the departments? I know you have Bureau of Sanitation here earlier, Enrique and his great work, but other departments reaching that level of dialogue and how we can look at these other areas that need to be addressed? I know there's gallons, there's thousands of gallons of water being pumped to the Los Angeles River. It goes out to the ocean. We're not capturing. Are we progressing within the departments of city family to have those types of discussions?
Councilmember, I would agree with you that there's some unprecedented cooperation and communication between city departments right now. There's, of course, a whole lot more that we need to be doing. We're aware of the issue that you're talking about construction dewatering. It is a difficult issue to deal with, but in areas like Ventura Boulevard or along the LA River, there is a high groundwater table. We appreciate your motion and your thoughts on that. It's something that we are going to have to look at and see, are there opportunities to utilize that water in those situations so it isn't lost to the ocean?
And just shooting from the hip, when you look at the capacity of our building a recycling pipelines that are near these high water tables, when a construction site comes online, maybe you can just plug right into it and divert it into the gray pipes for recycling into our ball fields, into our greenways, instead of just throwing it into the sewer and losing all that value. 144,000 gallons per day at a construction site is a lot of water. Valuable water is potable water. If maybe just, again, on a very broad brush manner, if we could map out the high water table areas and build into our infrastructure this great pipeline so that when construction begins, we don't delay construction, we plug right into it, and we capture that water, maybe to even water the medians in the immediate area, or to water the greenways, or to pump it out into the local park so that we have less water being spent at a local park. So I just want us to get to that level of sophistication. The technology's there, the goodwill is being demonstrated today. It's a matter of breaking these silos within the departments and having that connectivity. So we'll have part of this discussion further, but I just want to thank you for your hard work, particularly my district, Rec and Parks, amazing work, and Taylor Yards, and we have a splash pad that came online this summer. but these are areas that don't have swimming pools. So, again, thank you so much, Bureau of Sanitation, for all the hard work as well, and Department of Water and Power. But look forward to working with you on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Alarcon.
Yes, I'm not a huge fan of rate increases, but it seems like every decision we make these days is with a gun pointed at our heads, and we really don't have a choice. There is a water shortage. I'm convinced of that, and we also know that our infrastructure is in need of maintenance and operation, and now is not the time to detract from our maintenance and operation funds to try and acquire more water. I mean, we need to, we're going to have to go with a rate increase, recognizing that we don't have a lot of time for consideration, and we do have a gun pointed at our head, but I think it's okay to do that. I also want to say thank you to Department of Water and Power for this consideration for the public parks. The fact is that while landscapes are being challenged on the private sector and in the public sector, the public parks are for everybody. And if we can't maintain the parks for the general public, then they're probably certainly going to be challenged to enjoy the same kinds of recreation facilities and activities in their homes. So I think, not to mention, the long-term degradation of the parks could have a very detrimental effect on our budget that we may not be able to recoup from in the next even generation. And so I think it's a difficult decision to make, but I think it's one that's necessary. And so there are even issues that we don't know about, such as we don't know the effects of the long-standing fertilization into the sand layers where kids are playing, and whether that could have a detrimental effect, particularly in areas like the Northeast San Fernando Valley, where the rates of asthma are skyrocketing. So there's a lot of other reasons, but I just wanted to say thank you to Department of Recreation and Parks for informing us of that challenge, and then DWP for responding to it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you. Just a couple of basic questions. How much did the MWD raise their rates?
Metropolitan, you have the number? I don't have the percentage exactly. Great.
The Metropolitan Water District, our purchased water was between, which time period would you like to know? Okay, between, say, January of 2008, our purchased water was 87 cents per billing unit, and as of July of 2009, it's $1.25 per billing.
And how much are we raising our rates?
We're raising rates about 48 for Tier 2 only.
For Tier 2 only, yeah.
For Tier 2 only, it would be 48 cents, if it was done today, 48 cents per additional billing unit, which is 748 gallons.
And how much of our water on a percentage basis do we receive from MWD?
Currently, it's about 71%.
71%.
Yes.
So when we're raising our rates, some of the reason is because MWD is raising their rates, correct?
Yes.
And we receive 71% of our water from MWD. The added revenue that we will realize from the increased rates, why the need to charge that extra amount?
Well, what we try to do with purchased water, as well as what we do with energy, is those prices fluctuate up and down. So what we do is we try, it's basically what's called a pass-through, whereas as what we're being charged by Metropolitan Water District, we just pass that directly through to our customers.
So is it safe to say that a majority of the reason why we're charging higher rates now is because of the higher MWD rates?
Yes.
Yes, but it's not the only reason.
There's another reason, which would be recycled water and also demand-side management.
And those requirements, the new conservation efforts that we're going to have?
Yes.
Okay. But the majority is because of the MWD raise, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for a typical household, how much will the new average cost be for a typical household?
For a typical household, a typical household wouldn't really see an increase because the average use in a typical household is about 13 billion units per month, which is normally within the Tier 2 allowance that they have.
But for those who do go over the Tier 2 to the Tier 2,
they would see about 50 cents per billion unit in Tier 2.
okay, and have we estimated how much that's going to be in actual dollar amounts? I mean, in terms of how much they pay now? No, we haven't looked into that?
I have the calculation. I can get
that's fine.
to you.
Okay. And finally, thank you for looking at the low-income customers. We know we went through this with DWP on the other rates, and it was an afterthought at that time to think about low-income customers and what they would have to face. And so here we went forward on a rate increase along with support for low-income customers. And taking into consideration Mr. Smith's comments about those people who need to use additional water that may put them into Tier 2 due to medical conditions, I'm not saying I agree or I disagree, but I think perhaps if we see that the low-income discount program could capture those people, and then there's going to be other categories of people, that may be a way of addressing it. So I'm not saying I agree or disagree with Mr. Smith's need to address a specific category of people, but I think the low-income discount program was intended to do that, and maybe we look at other categories of people that might fall into that. So I just want to put that out there as a way of thinking about this issue as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. If not, we'll bounce back over to Mr. Koretz for a minute, and then to Mr. Wesson for a second time. Put Mr. Smith back in if he wants to speak. Mr. Koretz. I'm sorry.
I think you'd have me on by mistake.
Okay, take Mr. Koretz off the queue. Next speaker will be Mr. Wesson for a second time.
Yeah, I just want to ask a quick question. I was thinking about what John and Barry were, when they talked about how much water we save with the synthetic fields. And I recognize DWP, the resources that you have, your spending is kind of limited, because you can only spend it on certain things. Could you or have you discussed partnering with Rec and Parks and actually using some of your funds to create some more synthetic fields? If what they're suggesting the savings would be, that would make sense to me, that it would be a very cost-effective investment. And so I guess my question is, if you had money available, do you believe you could spend it in that fashion? And if the answer is yes, there should be some discussions with Rec and Park about ways to do that, because I just thought about it. I mean, you got to feel 10 years, no fertilizing, no water. If we had more of those, I wouldn't even begin to guess how much water we would save. So that's my question.
We will work with Rec and Parks and see if we can work together on trying to identify funds, whether we're applying for funds or figuring out is there a way for DWP to assist to incentivize these programs. We agree that they're in the interests of the city, and we'll do what we can do to see how we can help advance them.
John, what do you think? What do you think?
I think that's an excellent idea. Obviously we have the need in the city for more synthetic sports fields throughout for a variety of reasons. We need the fields, they save water, and they're there forever. So I would love to work with the Department of Water and Power or anyone who wants to bring money into the city of LA to put in these fields.
One of the areas where we would probably look at that would be in our water conservation program. To the extent that we can establish a program that's actually cost effective, and the price to DWP, basically the price that DWP provides to support that project is less than what it would cost our ratepayers for us to, say, purchase water from MWD. To that extent, I think that we might be able to support those types of programs. So that's something that our water conservation area would have to look at.
Okay, so
we'll pass that on.
I don't want to have to amend a motion to add language or anything like that, but so can I trust that there will be a high-level meeting between Rec and Parks and DWP to discuss the feasibility of trying to help either obtain new funds or use some of the funds that you have? And I think it makes sense if we did some kind of analysis to see how much money you would save. We might all be surprised.
We'll follow up. Consider it a priority to have such a meeting and to pursue it as energetically as possible.
Thanks, Barry.
All right. No one else on the speaker queue, which means the city attorney has information?
Yeah, David Hotchkiss, City Attorney's Office. So at this point, it is our recommendation that a date certain be selected. We are proposing October the 9th, 2009, for the vote on the, on number 24.
Okay, so you want the vote to be taken
to set a date certain for there to be sufficient time for compliance with Prop 218, and that the council will address this matter on the 9th of October at its regular meeting.
All right. Madam Clerk, we're going to roll on that. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item, number 21, please.
And that was called, that was being held on the desk for the committee report from the ad hoc ERR committee, and that has been distributed to the council members.
There are no cards on 21.
Can I inquire for clarification? Did we address 25 simultaneously? Thank you.
There's no cards, Madam Clerk. No speakers in the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item, please.
And Mr. President, while council is still in the special meeting, would you like to take up item number 23 at this time? That was called special for cards.
Yes, number 23. Mr. Arnold Sachs on number 23, sir.
Good afternoon, thank you. Item 23, the council is going to decide on some bond issuances. Yet, when you come before the council and request clarification on a bond that was authorized by the city council, and I'm talking about the $950 million bond for the airport renovations that was authorized by the city council, you get double talk, because you'll hear, oh, the airport bonds are under the jurisdiction of the FAA. Well, that doesn't address the city bond. Both the city and the airport coincidentally issued bonds in the amount of $950 million. That's two different bonds. When you can't get a straight answer on a simple question, it's time to board your windows up, because you know what's coming down this railroad track. All we're asking for, is clarification. If one bond is covered, such as the bonds that were issued when CEO Fujioka left the city employment, and there was discrepancy regarding how those would be issued. And I believe Councilman Cardenas explained that the city saved $5 million out of a possible $17 million. How will these bonds be issued? And again, simple clarification. Two bonds issued, one by the city for $950 million, one by the airport for $950 million. We get answers on the status of the airport bond, but we don't get any answers on the status of the city bond. Why is that so? I wonder.
3, 2, 1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sachs. That matter is now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Very well. Forthwith on that matter?
16.
That concludes the special meeting. Do you wish to adjourn and go back to the regular meeting?
Yes. And let's go to number 16, please.
All right, Arnold Sachs.
And that was called special, the cards, and also Councilmember Hahn.
Councilman Hahn, we have a card from Mr. Sachs. You want to hear from him first? Or would you like to speak first, Ms. Hahn? On number 16. Ms. Hahn? Would you rather, Mr. Sachs has a card, do you rather hear from him and then you, or which way?
Well, why don't we wait and
Hear from Mr. Sachs first?
hear from Mr. Sachs later?
Okay, go ahead. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. Colleagues, I just share the concern that I think all of us do, that the budget that the state is about to pass is, really is going to be very difficult for local cities all across the state. Some would even say it was irresponsible. It was very annoying to me to watch them all smiling and congratulating themselves on coming together with the deal and pretending like they were going to be saving jobs and without raising taxes. But in fact, if it's true that we may be losing close to $250 million, we're going to lose about $120 million in property taxes, $66 million in gas tax revenues, $70 million in potential community redevelopment appropriations. I just felt like we needed to have a report from our own city staff on exactly what they're hearing, what they think this could mean to us. And then I don't know if it would be appropriate for us to go into closed session at some point to talk about the idea that maybe we join with the county and with other cities in actually suing the state of California to stop them from taking this money. Again, we worked so hard to balance our budget, and we were in hours and hours and hours of very fragile negotiations with our unions. We came up with a deal that was going to avoid furloughs and layoffs. We're experiencing pain, and we've made some serious cuts. We all have. But the thought that they could balance this budget and on the backs of local government was very, very troubling to me. So I thought it would be appropriate sooner than later that we hear from our own city staff exactly what this budget is, what it means to us, and then I think we need to decide what action that we take as responsible lawmakers in our own city and protecting the public welfare in the state of Los Angeles, what we need to do maybe to stop this highway robbery that is what I'm calling it from Sacramento. Thank you. State highway robbery. That's right.
Federal highway.
So.
Okay. First of all, in terms of the status, the Senate did pass the budget bills. There are about 31 total bills that are currently before the Assembly. There are a number of bills that the Assembly has not acted on yet. They're still in session. They have not acted on the local funding bills. So we sit here today, as we've come before you before, there is uncertainty on exactly what they're going to do. But the Senate plan, and I think it's looking very likely that the Assembly is going to adopt something very similar, if not exactly the same. But it would do it would have a Prop 1A borrowing of the property tax that would hit the city to the tune of about $120 million. The bill would include a JPA that would allow for local agencies to borrow that money secured by the state's repayment. The exact terms of that JPA, however, are still being worked out. The League of California Cities, which put the JPA together for the 2003 VLF borrowing, sent a letter saying that the way that the JPA is structured in the legislation, the interest rate caps and other issues, they believe that it will not be possible to go through the state JPA to borrow as it's currently structured. So clearly, I think an issue for the CAO to address would be that if the state JPA doesn't work and we're not able to borrow, whether the city could borrow on its own. The risk there obviously is the repayment source is the city revenues, and we're banking taking on the state rather than the other way around. They are taking the gas tax money as well. Last night at something around 2 in the morning, my information is the mayor's office was able to get into the bill a borrowing rather than a straight take. And how that would work is that they would take the money for 2 years, they would start repaying it in year 3 and repay it over a 10-year period. So that would be $66 million to the city in each of the next 2 years. The question there is whether that sort of repayment obligation from the state would let us borrow against the $66 million. And again, I know that's an issue that the CEO will want to address. Other than that, there are there clearly are uncertainties. The CRA issue, which I know Cecilia can address, and the HUDA or the gas tax take has to be validated. So we're not going to know for sure what's going to happen probably until December. So we're still operating under a great deal of uncertainty. But if the bills come out as we think they will, I think clearly we need to assume from a budgetary standpoint that that money is gone. If the courts do not validate the process, the likelihood is they're going to find some money on the backs of the local agencies to make up for that difference. I think in essence, those are the highlights. We're monitoring it as we go. One final thing: if the Assembly, as many of you know, if they come out with bills different from the Senate, then there'll have to be a conference, and I believe it'll be at least 90 days before that could happen.
Thank you. And I guess I also want to hear about how this impacts our community redevelopment projects, and then of course, Ray, I'd love for you to say, if this really went forward like this, barring our opportunity to sue the state and stop it, what does this mean in terms of our negotiations that we already negotiated, our deals that we made? What happens now in terms of particularly our employees?
Councilman Hahn, on the redevelopment take, there are really two. I'm going to address the first one, which is the one that's most easy to understand, and then the second, which is the so-called City of Industry proposal, quite complex. We're still trying to get into the weeds of it, and our Chief Operating Officer, Glenn Wasserman, will address that. The first is the now $2.050 billion take of redevelopment. So actually, Councilwoman Hahn, it's more than we had thought 2 days ago. This would be $1.7 billion this year statewide, and next year $350 million. And that's based on, and that's proportioned out to the redevelopment agencies based on their 2008 tax increment. So what this means for Los Angeles is, over the next 2 years, it's $100 million of redevelopment agency funds would have to go to the state of California. For this year alone, this fiscal year, that amounts to about $83 million. To give you a sense of what that would do to our work program, we get about $137 million of net tax increment this year is our projection. After debt service, we have about $53 million in operating expenses, leaving $84 million for work program, including affordable housing development. The state would take $83 million. So it would effectively wipe out the entire work program for this year. What we have, again, we're going to need to have the dust settle on this, but we've instructed our regional administrators to take some general estimates that we've produced, apportioning this across all project areas, and to sit with your staff as soon as the budget is final and work through which projects would remain in the pipeline, which would be potentially on the chopping block. But the general message is we anticipate we would not be able to add any new programs or projects without taking something else off the table.
And what were they saying about, I guess what they were giving back was the ability to extend our CRA out so many years, and we've had one county supervisor say that it wasn't sure that was even legal. What are they trying to...
Okay, so for this portion of the take, we would get a 1-year extension on our redevelopment project area deadlines. Now, the other extension relates to the so-called City of Industry proposal, and if you don't mind, I'd like Glenn Wasserman to explain it. It's very complex.
Thank you. So in addition to that $2.05 billion take from redevelopment agencies. There's an additional proposal that is being referred to as the City of Industry proposal. If I could take just a quick minute to put that in context, council members know that in order to adopt a redevelopment project area or to extend redevelopment project area, we need to make factual findings that the area is blighted, that there are physical and economic conditions that are so serious that private sector acting alone and traditional government powers can't address that. In addition, when we adopt redevelopment plans, we also have to impose time limits and dollar limits on the life of those plans. Right. So what's referred to as the City of Industry proposal, which we understand was passed by the Senate 27-13, each redevelopment agency would pay on an annual basis starting in fiscal year 09-10 10% of tax increment revenue after making the required 20% deposit into the low and moderate income housing fund. So, for example, based just rough numbers, the CRA's fiscal year 10 number would be something like $20.7 million. So that would be an annual payment for the life of the project. Every agency that makes the agency transfer payment would receive a number of extensions and eliminations of time and fiscal limits on all of their redevelopment plans without any requirement of having to prove blight. The time limit on plan effectiveness would be extended by 40 years. That's the period of time that CRA and the city have to use redevelopment powers in a redevelopment project area. The time limit on receiving tax increment would be extended to 10 years beyond that new time limit on plan effectiveness. Any time limit on incurring indebtedness would be deleted. Any dollar limit on the receipt of tax increment would be eliminated. Any dollar limit on outstanding bonded indebtedness would be eliminated. Any limitations on the receipt of tax increment or time limits on incurring indebtedness or a dollar limit on outstanding bonded indebtedness that are contained in any pass-through agreement with other taxing agencies would be eliminated. A redevelopment agency would not be required to make the agency transfer payment from a redevelopment project and would not receive those extensions and eliminations unless within 45 days of the effective date of the act. Sorry.
I'm going to check. Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing Jim.
All right. So an agency is not required to make the agency transfer payment that I just described and doesn't receive the extensions and eliminations of time and dollar limits if within 45 days of the effective date of the act, the redevelopment agency adopts a resolution declining the extensions. So every redevelopment agency would have to opt out. If the redevelopment agency doesn't adopt a resolution, then it is subject to this requirement. An agency may also postpone the commencement of the agency transfer payment by up to 5 fiscal years. That would also have to be completed by resolution adopted by the agency within 45 days.
I think you're right. It is complicated, and I think if we're having a hard time understanding, I can imagine what the viewing public is. What does this mean? Give us the cliff notes on this, the Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
What does this mean to us?
Councilwoman Hahn, the critical component is this all falls apart unless enough agencies are part of this deal so that the state can bond up to $7.4 billion. That determination must be made by December. This may be very difficult for the iBank, who's a player in this, to make that determination by December.
So what?
So what I think this means is, as you know, a certain supervisor and a board of supervisors has already declared that they're going to sue any city that attempts to pursue this. The way the Senate has done this, we're all in it unless we opt out.
Okay.
And moreover, if we're in it and the $7.4 billion can be issued for the debt, then the HUDA take, the property tax take, and the other redevelopment take go away. So effectively, the state is saying you can get out of your local government obligation to pay the state if you take this deal, but it may be very difficult to to take the deal for some practical reasons, whether they can actually borrow this much money in this time frame. And that's the part where we just need to see what the final bill is to understand what it means. I'm sorry, but it is changing hourly.
I see, and I'm sure we'll all have more questions for each one, but if we could just go now to, what does this mean? You have to go back to the table now?
Certainly. As part of the tentative letter of agreement, there are provisions that basically, if the state or some sort of fiscal emergency comes up that exceeds $100 million, then we are to go back to the table.
They're trying to find out right now, okay? I've asked them. Yeah.
Okay.
Asked them to
There we
find
go.
out, and they're looking right now.
So as part of the letter of agreement, there are provisions that if there's a state take or any other fiscal emergency that exceeds $100 million, then we are to go back to the table and look at our options. Now, it also includes some provisions some things that we're supposed to look at, one being borrowing, our ability to borrow. We're supposed to look at the judgment obligation bonds. If we have judgments over $10 million, we're supposed to maximize special fund revenues where we can, et cetera, et
So we
cetera.
kind of had all this built into your final contract.
Yes. So we will go back, and then they are responsible for 1/3 of the solution.
Okay. Well, again, I'm sure other council members have some comments. From just this brief presentation here, it doesn't look good, and it's irresponsible, in my opinion, for them to create a budget like this that really is so draconian to these local governments. And all those legislators who came from local government, and every time they get elected, we always say, remember, you came from local government. You understand what our obligations are locally. When you go to Sacramento, don't forget us. No problem. We're not going to forget you. We understand. And then, they're trying to bow to the minority that this feels like they can't raise one tax, and yet the devastation and the destruction that's, I think, going to result from this kind of a budget is really unfortunate.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Cardenas.
So based on what Ms. Hahn's questions were and your responses, it sounds like the state has come up with a scheme or a plan that they basically did something, and they're basically trying to get us to borrow our way out of what they did.
In essence, yes. Yes.
And it's my understanding that one of the things that this current governor said when on his way to becoming the current governor, was that he wasn't going to borrow his way out of the fiscal problems of the state. I mean, I'm not getting political. I think I'm just getting black and white. I'm pretty sure those were the themes and the actual things that he claimed that he was going to, or not going to do, is borrow our way out of the state's budget problems. And here we are, where the state legislature, the powers that be that they are, and the governor have come up with a way to try to get past their unbalanced budget, and they're pushing how many billions of dollars our way and trying to encourage us to maybe take some deal where we're going to borrow our way out of it?
Well, the total statewide is about, between CRA and 1A borrowing is close to $5 billion. Against $2 billion in property tax and $2 billion in redevelopment. So yeah, it's an extraordinary amount of money. And one other element that popped up in the middle of the night, and I'm not sure how under 1A they can do this, but the Assembly bill now, what it says is there's a hardship exemption for small cities which are not defined, that can't afford the take of property tax, and they can apply for an exemption, and their take would be spread over all of the other cities within that county. I'm not quite sure how that's possible. And but it's small cities, and they haven't defined that. But I'm sure that we would not.
We're not considered a small city. We're the largest populated city in the state by far. What is the impact based on the state Senate bill, the Assembly bill, as we see them today, based on our basic analysis, how much are we being hit with these actions? How much less money is the City of Los Angeles going to have to work with because of their actions?
It would be $186 million in the current fiscal year. I don't, at this point, the property tax borrowing is not for 2 years, I don't believe. So we're looking at another $66 million in gas tax next year.
So those actions, do they basically implicate our ability to continue to fund every department in the city? Is every department in the city potentially could be affected by that magnitude of a taking?
Yes. We cannot afford a $180 million hit if we are not able to borrow in some fashion. Every department in the city would take an enormous hit.
Okay. That's one of the things that I encourage the public to watch today's discussion on the council on this item. As we put this item over till today, thank you, Ms. Hahn, for bringing it forward, is that I want the people of Los Angeles to understand that their legislators, this governor, have now seemed to have taken actions that are directly affecting the City of Los Angeles' ability to continue to keep our library hours the way they're used to them as of last year. Our ability to keep the number of officers employed and pay for their benefits as we did last year. Firefighters, park directors, people who clean our streets, people who rebuild our streets. All of these are all of the various departments that we handle in this city. And one of the things that I want the public to understand is the state of California, the departments that they run like CHP or Caltrans, etc., they do not take care of our streets. They do not police our streets. We have our own police department to police our streets. We have our own crews and supposed to have our own funding until they take it to be able to fix our own streets. So the actions that they seem to have taken and look like it's going to be finalized very, very shortly is that we're going to see the City of Los Angeles, like every other city and county in the state, affected very badly on our ability to continue to give the people of Los Angeles and everybody who lives in California the services that local government handles. Not the state departments, not the Department of Motor Vehicles, that's a state department. Not Caltrans, they handle the freeways, those are the roads that they handle, not our street. If you live on Louver Street in Pacoima, you're going to be affected. Your street is going to be affected. If you live on Van Nuys Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley or drive down that street, you're going to feel the difference. I just want people to understand that every single department in the city is not going to be able to remain unaffected by what Sacramento did, by what the legislature and the governor did, and exactly what they're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Rosendahl. Yeah.
Is it a total of $200 million? What's our bottom line of what we're exposed to and they're passing the buck to us?
$186 million from the general fund.
And $100 million from the redevelopment agency.
186 and 100, so that's $286 million. Is that our total figure? Okay, with the $186 million from the general fund process, Jerry, what does that mean? Well, we're already in a tough situation, talking furloughs and layoffs and cutting backs and scaling back projects. I mean, when you talk to half of our departments, they can barely function because we're already in that mode. What will this do additionally to us who are where the rubber hits the road?
Well, by way of example, in essence, the $66 million in gas tax is really the only money for your street work for the entire year.
So there goes all our streets.
Zero street work. Other than what we might be able to get through the Recovery Act, really zero street work for the next year. $100 million represents roughly 2,000 city positions. Whether that's layoffs, whether that's retirement, that represents about 2,000 city positions, and that's about another 20% of your civilian workforce.
Now, with their action, when do we literally have to do all of these things? Stop this, stop that, cut this, get rid of that? What's our time sensing?
Well, therein lies the difficulty, and we're going to have to wait and see the final language. I think, as Cecilia indicated, with the industry plan, if enough people opt in and it makes sense, and that's going to have to be a serious debate, because as I understand it, 10% off the top for the entire next 40 years will come from the redevelopment agency to the state. So if enough people opt in and this all goes away, then they don't take the $186 million. But it's clearly going to be challenged by the court. So at this point, we just simply don't know. So my advice is we need to assume today that that money is not there, and we need to look at ways of doing cash flow borrowings or other purposes that I know the CEO is going to be looking at to find out what our options are. But my recommendation is that you start the process of programming in that reduction now.
Is there something we can do, like suing them and putting in an injunction and stop these people from stealing the money from the people?
The possibility of legal action is very real.
All right, so if we sue them, how long would that take? And I certainly suggest we sue them if they're going to take that $286 million away from us.
And in fact, the League of California Cities has already retained a law firm to file the lawsuit on behalf of all cities. The State Association of Counties is joining in that lawsuit. That lawsuit will apply to, at least as proposed, the taking of the gas tax monies. At this point in time, at least the manner in which the tax money is proposed to be taken is consistent with the Constitution under Proposition 1A that was passed. And there's a very slim to none chance of prevailing in challenging that. We're looking at a lawsuit challenging the $66 million. Also, the CRA Association for the State, Agencies Association, is looking at filing a lawsuit challenging that $100 million impact to us, and that whole taking the $2 billion. So 2 lawsuits are being looked at, CRA and the gas tax.
Okay, and if they fiddle through their dysfunctional strategies up there in the next day, can we throw the lawsuit at them on Saturday? I mean, I don't want to wait. I want to nail them if we can.
The timing, at least the timing on the answers to the lawsuit will be filed as quickly as possible. The timing on the bill for the gas tax money becoming final is, I believe it's 90 days, but the lawsuit would be filed in mid to late August at the latest, where the League, and we're working closely with them, intends to go straight to the Court of Appeal rather than to the trial court, ask the, the 3rd District Court of Appeal to take jurisdiction over the lawsuit, and we'd get a much quicker resolution that way.
Okay, well then I recommend to my colleagues that unless Mr. Wesson or Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Alarcon, who've been up in Sacramento, have advice for me differently, that we should file a lawsuit and we should go forward with that lawsuit right now. Do you need a motion from me for that?
We don't need a motion. Our intention and our recommendation to you would be that we have a single lawsuit so that we don't have a multiplicity of cases. We're working very actively with the League, and we would urge you to let us join in that action and participate in that action.
I move that we join in that action, file a lawsuit that encompasses all of that, work with our former legislators who can help us with the proper advice on it, but that we put this motion in today and make it very clear the City of Los Angeles will not tolerate this. We will not lie down and let them step all over us, and that we should sue them. Is there a second for my motion?
Is there a second for Mr. Rosendall's motion? Mr. Second from Mr. Reyes and a second from Mr. Rosendahl. Would you please restate? There's 2 seconds, Reyes and Wesson. Restate your motion, Mr. Rosendahl.
My motion is that the City of Los Angeles not wait another second and go forward with a lawsuit joined with the other municipalities in a concerted effort, one lawsuit against the state for this, what I consider a taking that is absolutely wrong, and we should go forward immediately with it.
We have a second by Mr. Weston and Mr. Reyes. Ms. Han, did you want to comment?
Thank you.
If you want to add a second? Mr. Koretz wants to add his name onto that? All right, so there are a few more speakers in the queue, though, before we have our final vote. Our next speaker would be Mr. Alarcon.
I have no problem with suing, but I'd like to know exactly what we're suing. And I'm not clear from the motion what exactly, which group we're joining with and all that. Usually, the recommendations will come to us as to the specific lawsuits that we are joining. And I don't know, I think we should just wait till that information comes.
May I clarify, as I understand the motion, and what would be our recommendation? The recommendation would be
Hold my
that...
time, please.
The recommendation would be that we join the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties in the lawsuit that they're filing to challenge the gas
And the
tax.
Association of Community Redevelopment Agencies.
Well, that's a different lawsuit. It's a two-part recommendation.
See, that's why I need clarification.
In the lawsuit, they're filing to challenge the taking of the gas tax monies, the $2 billion, $1 billion this year, $1 billion next year, and that the CRA also be urged to join the CRA State Agencies Association lawsuit challenging the taking of the tax increment funds.
Okay, if that's the understanding, is that... Okay, fine. Can you tell me, can you explain the theories behind the legal arguments that we would be making, and which parts of the money we're talking about? Are we talking about, can we sue them for the entire $286 million? What exactly are we talking about here? The CRA has $100 million. What is the theory behind that taking? And with regard to the $186 million, which portions of that are we talking about that we have a basis for suing? Are we talking about the gas tax money only? Yes. Then can we be a little more clear about what we're talking about in terms of suing, and which parts we can't touch? That they took it, if they take it, it's gone, we can't do anything about it.
I'll leave the CRA monies, the theory for that, to be explained by Glenn.
Hold my time, please.
The action that the League is contemplating and that we would join in is the action on the gas tax monies. They clearly do not have the money to take that, the ability to take that money. It violates the proposition that was passed amending the Constitution. That's money that is directly allocated to cities. That allocation is required to remain permanently, and the taking by the state of that money violates the Proposition 2, which was the one that adopted both that system and established the allocations of funds. That's the theory on gas tax money. We've reviewed the legal memorandum that was prepared by the law firm retained by the League of California Cities. We think they've made solid, strong arguments, and we think that that's a very sound position. With respect to the real property money that they propose to take under 1A, and we have not seen the final language, there may be a basis to challenge that. I don't know yet. When we see the final language, we'll make a determination along with the League. That's the rest of the the first part, the gas tax, is about $66 million to us this year. The property tax would be approximately $120 million. That, if they follow the state constitutional provisions that were adopted under Proposition 1A a few years back, I doubt that there would be a legal theory that we could bring a lawsuit under. Again, that's if they adhere to the state constitutional provisions. So far, we've seen a strong disregard, but we haven't seen that specific language, and we don't know whether there'll be a basis for it.
The legal theory behind the California Redevelopment Association lawsuit, which is the same legal theory we prevailed on last time, would be that the money is being taken and not being used for a redevelopment purpose.
Mr. Alarcon?
Thank you for that very brief, general theory description. But I've been briefed by the CRA already as to a little more detail on the theory, and I think we have the strongest case actually in the CRA, but this is an action we have to take. And frankly, as a former legislator, and I'm not speaking for any of my colleagues who were in the legislature, but I have to tell you, I'm dumbfounded that the legislature would take these positions when they are so clearly in violation of the spirit of the votes that put them in place. I can be dumbfounded. Mr. Wesson, you're no, and seriously, I am, because there are other ways that the budget could have been crafted to fill the gaps that would have been legal. So I'm the part of the state budget that I don't understand. Taking from the localities, nothing new, but taking it in a way that is so clearly challengeable in the courts is new, and I think they tried it with the CRA money last time. They lost, and they're back at it again with a finer pen. But I don't think they've overcome the legal issue at the core, and so it's look, we're going to be in for a rough time, and I think we all know that. We all knew that this was coming. We all knew that something to this extent was coming, and we're just going to have to buckle down and resharpen our pencils and figure out how we're going to get to this. If these challenges move forward, what is the time length that we're looking at in terms of the CRA and the other two situations? Well, how long are we taking that before the courts might be able to resolve these?
On the Redevelopment Association lawsuit, we've already authorized, our board's already authorized our executive director to file litigation if he believes it is necessary. But as has been stated before, we aren't going to be able to file until we see the final legislation, and so we'll be able to more finely tune our legal arguments. I'm not sure how soon that will be. It depends on whether these are urgency measures passed or if they're passed with a simple majority vote. So we could be looking at filing a lawsuit sometime in August or September. We did this last time, and we had a judgment by March of this year. But it's very difficult to predict the timing of a piece of litigation. Very, very difficult. We may be seeking an injunction based on the Superior Court ruling in the previous case. Again, it's difficult to project. Our lawyers at the Redevelopment Association are looking at the various legal theories. I would be very happy to have our attorneys brief our city attorneys, who might then be able to brief the city council on our legal theories once we have a better sense of what the legislation looks like.
And as far as the gas tax litigation, the time frame would be somewhat similar, although, again, as I mentioned, the league is thinking of going directly to the Court of Appeal rather than to a trial court.
Us as well.
And we anticipate the state would resist us through the courts of appeal, so that will take away that part of the time delay. How quickly the court would, one, give us expedited briefing treatment, and we would exhaust, presumably, any appeals to the state Supreme Court. I'm guessing that it would be a 6-month process at the outset.
There's one other matter on the litigation, Councilmember Alarcon. On the City of Industry proposal, it requires that a validation action be completed by December of this year. That's a very tight timeline. It may be impractical to achieve that. And again, we expect there will be a lawsuit almost immediately by the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles, County of Los Angeles.
And finally, in terms of the gas tax, I think one of the key issues is going to be whether the state withholds the money or whether litigation there would be a restraining order to have them remit the money until it's resolved. Clearly, they're going to try to withhold the money. And again, as long as they're following the 1A Constitution requirements, the property tax take would start immediately.
Very well. Our next speaker, Mr. Reyes, followed by Mr. Wesson. And that's our last speaker on the queue.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate this discussion. And what's more heart-wrenching for me is that in the pockets of need in the city where CRA exists, it took us so many years to reach a level of organizing communities, making investments. We've acquired properties. These are transformative projects that are going to change the face, create new revenue for the state, create revenue for the city. And they're doing just the opposite. They're gutting us out. They're taking the heart out of all of this work. And it's just amazing how short-sighted that is. I mean, you could actually create more revenue for the state in the long run if they left us alone. But they're not seeing it that way. It's just not being looked at from a long-term point of view. So for all the citizenry out there, especially in Pico Union, Westlake, and Chinatown, in Lincoln Heights, in my district, all of you that are listening to this, yes, we've been meeting for 4 or 5 years on these plans. Yes, we've been talking about the new park spaces, the new facades, the job generators that are literally going to be just going to pull the plug from them. And talking to our executive director, Cita Solano from CRA, it's like they're going to put it in neutral, it may be in reverse for about 2 years. Is that right?
I would say more likely 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years. So this drastic blow nullifies, at least from my experience, almost 8 years of work, of community meetings, night after night, discussing stakeholder issues, consensus building, housing. I mean, the Westlake Theater will lay fallow for a longer period of time. So again, these legislators are either not factoring in what this means to their own constituents, they're blind, they're desperate, but they're definitely committing, I like to say, is highway robbery, has been said before, and I just need to say that to the public because they're going to turn around and ask me, why are we meeting? What's the point if we can't do anything anyway because they took our money? So thank you very much.
Mr. Wesson, followed by Mr. Garcetti.
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is apologize to Richard. As I thought about what you said, I'm a tad dumbfounded myself by the action. But we both know that what they're attempting to do now is just on paper balance their budget so that they can, move forward. And that's exactly what happened. But what I wanted to ask Cecilia, because Mr. Reyes makes a very valid point, how this would really set us back. Now, what is the difference between the reason why they think they can take this money from us now? What is different than last year? And is that on appeal?
Yes. Again, Councilmember Wesson, until we see the final language, we're not going to be able to tell you exactly what the theory is. But here's what we know, that the people drafting the language, implementing the redevelopment take, were on the legal team that fought us in the lawsuit in which we prevailed. So they are very familiar with the Superior Court ruling, which stated that sweeping our money and putting it in an ERAF account that had no relationship to project areas did not serve a redevelopment purpose. So we have heard that part of the theory is to say that the money will go to school districts and schools which are located within project areas. However, we also know that the exact amount that we will be depositing in these ERAF accounts will then be subtracted from those very school districts and schools, so that the net effect is zero. Therefore, one would suspect that a strong argument is there is no benefit, there is no redevelopment purpose for doing this, since it has not created any benefit. All it has done is created a nullity. That's one theory. The overall theory being this is unconstitutional. You can only use redevelopment dollars for a redevelopment purpose. And this is clearly not what it's being used for. It's clearly being used to fill general fund budget gaps in the other parts of the state budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Garcetti.
And thank you very much for that clarification, Ms. Estolano, because I think when you think of redevelopment dollars, they're really local dollars spent locally at their best. For a long time, people looked at the flaws in some redevelopment areas and some redevelopment agencies, and I don't disagree with many of them. I think we've all learned from them, and you've done a great job. You've had a staff of folks who have returned it more to the community. We've seen that in Hollywood, where the community hostility that used to exist towards redevelopment has really transformed into community collaboration. But to take that money away from local uses is not only wrong, it would seem to be unconstitutional. Now, what we heard, and I don't know, Mr. Miller, if you have heard this as well, but, is that what they're trying to queue up on the legal strategy, though, is that they're not going to take necessarily gas tax unless the redevelopment money isn't there. So they're essentially trying to get us not to sue by saying, look, we will just take redevelopment money, potentially borrow these other ones, but repay it. But if there's not redevelopment money, we might have to take gas tax. So what we're twisted in right now, colleagues, is this thing where they've turned us against ourselves, saying, well, you're going to pay one way or another. You tell us which way you want us which way you want us to take money from you. And as I've said before, I mean, this is really, we're the responsible home on the street. We've tightened our belts, we've saved our money, we've cut back on expenses, and the rich guy up the street, can't make his Ferrari payments and is coming and knocking on our door and trying to take our money right now. It is not right. And it's not to say, I don't want to be too snide about it. There are important state programs that we all support and have stood up to support and have helped, in some cases around this horseshoe, to actually pass and implement, write the legislation from some of our members. That said, we were promised structural solutions. There is no structural solution to this. So I don't know on the legal strategy if there's advice for us or thoughts on this, but as we say, sue on one, I just want to make sure we're not then saying, okay, well, guess what? We protected our redevelopment money, which I know is very important to you and to me too, but now we've lost our gas tax. Now we've lost, some of our other general fund monies. Obviously, they can't take property tax, but they could potentially take gas tax. The other strategy, obviously, say, well, let's defend on both ends. The state then has to find those monies elsewhere, but I don't know what you've heard or your advice.
Well, I think you're correct, and I think this goes to the City of Industry proposal. I mean,
That's right.
Quite cynically, what they're trying to do is get local agencies to opt into that proposal in the hopes that the Prop 1A and the Huda borrowing would not occur. Of course, the problem is, as we know, many counties sue anytime any redevelopment agency is ever established, and the notion of extending all redevelopment areas by 40 years, but the second problem
just on that point, may I say one thing really quickly, Mr. Miller, because it bears a little bit more discussion. There are many of us who really do embrace good redevelopment work, and so you could say, oh, it's tempting to just extend that. But it's fundamentally undemocratic as well, because people had an expectation of how long redevelopment is supposed to last, and we shouldn't extend it past when some of these areas come back. The whole point of redevelopment is to help neighborhoods get back on their feet. Hollywood, for instance, right now is getting back on its feet. In a few years, at the end of the life of our redevelopment plan, if we're successful, and I believe we are being successful, we should be done. And yet they're saying, but here's a little bribe. Go ahead. Don't worry about the people. We'll give you a little bit extra more money if you give us some up front. And that would seem to be wrong on two fronts as well. I'm sorry, you were making a second point as well.
But the difficult part of that, though, is what they're asking you to do is to opt into something that is clearly subject to a legal challenge that you have no control over. So you opt in.
So we could be on the receiving end of a third party or an individual out there saying this is undemocratic and unconstitutional.
Correct. So even if you opt in, you find out having a validation occur, as Cecilia said, by December 1st is very, very ambitious. But if at the end of the day, if another party sues, we're back to where we started, and you're now faced, 6 months, 9 months into the year with a significant loss of revenue and less time to recover.
Right. Well, colleagues, just in conclusion for myself, before I become a partner in crime with the state, I would want to consult my constituents in my redevelopment areas and see how are we doing and would we want to extend the life of these project areas. And that's something naturally we would do, hopefully, with all of our money in place, not because suddenly half of it's taken away. And so, in terms of pursuing legal strategy, maybe it is then to do all of the above, both gas tax and redevelopment money, to be able to make sure that one doesn't lead us to losing another source. Do you feel strong, my last question for the city attorney, do you feel strong on a challenge to the gas tax take or borrow?
Yes. Again, depending on what that final action is, if it's as proposed, yes.
Okay, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker on this matter. Ms. Hahn, we have one public speaker.
Okay. Yeah, and I really appreciate this discussion. What I think we should do is continue this item until maybe Tuesday, when we hopefully will have the final budget with all the bills that have been passed, that we have a better sense of exactly how serious this highway robbery really is and what impact it has on the residents of Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Ms. Hand, for the record, the Senate passed, and I understand the Assembly is still debating the 30-some bills,
Right.
and they will continue to debate those bills. We have a public speaker on this matter, Arnold Sachs. Please come forward, and then we will take a vote. Madam Clerk? Mr. Sachs, you have 1 minute left. 60 seconds on the clock. There you go.
Start now? Thank you. Very interesting conversation. Irresponsible government. You should have heard the MTA yesterday with Supervisor Yaroslavsky saying he didn't trust the speaker from Oslo Beretta, who is a legal expert. That was surprising. State is balancing the budget on the back of local government, while the local balance their budget on the backs of the middle class. I heard mention of this gas tax, $66 million. Can we get an idea of how many miles of road were repaired in L.A. last year on this $66 million? Just amazing stuff. The legal fees that are being generated. Where's that money coming from? I'm not supporting the state, but you guys, look at what happened with the police and the trash impact.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Your time is up, sir. That matter is now before us. Open the roll.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe there was a request to continue
Continue
this
till
matter to
Tuesday?
Tuesday, and if that's the case, the vote isn't
No vote?
necessary.
Okay. Then we will continue until Tuesday without opposition. Mr. Rosendahl? Mr. Rosendahl does not wish to continue the matter. You wish to take a vote, Mr. Rosendahl?
Okay, would you like to take a vote then on the continuance?
All right. Well, let's open the roll on the continuance. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
It continues. Okay, let's open it again. Mr. Rosendahl is not working. Let's open it again. Open the roll. Close the roll. Mr. Rosendahl's not working?
Yeah, no, he is.
All right. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, the matter passes. Continue until Tuesday. Thank you. Next item would be number 14.
If council wishes, yes. Item number 14.
Mr. Garcetti, number 14.
Yes, I'd like to invite up a very patient public speaker who's here from the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. This was a motion from Mr. Labange and myself. Just during this week when we opened Madame Tussauds museum in Hollywood, there was one wax figure of our beloved friend and the longtime mayor of Hollywood, Johnny Grant, who was there. And when you walk into that room, you come around the corner and you hear his voice, which is recorded, and you see his likeness, you can't help but start to cry and to miss him so much. He was an amazing, amazing person. And it was Tom's idea. I signed on to this, but to name the post office that is there at Hollywood and Highland, adjacent to Johnny Grant Way, after him. And I know that all the work that he did at the Chamber, that Nicole's here to say a few words, and I'd ask you colleagues to listen to her and thank her for her patience on a very busy day today.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank Council President Garcetti, Council Members Labange and Hahn for introducing this resolution in support of H.R. 2760, which designates the Wilcox Branch Post Office as the Johnny Grant Hollywood Post Office building. As you know, above all, Johnny Grant loved his country. He would be so honored to know that this bill has been introduced in the United States House of Representatives. On a personal note, as the Chamber's newest staff, I actually never got to meet Johnny Grant. I started just a couple months after he passed. But I can tell you there's not a day that I walk into my office and don't realize the contributions he's made not only to the Chamber but also to Hollywood. His legacy is very much alive. And what a fitting tribute to someone who has meant so much to Hollywood and to all of Los Angeles. So once again, thank you very much for supporting the Johnny Grant Hollywood Post Office building.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thank you to the Chamber. And want to also thank Congresswoman Watson, who's carrying the legislation for us, who is a good friend of Johnny's and a big fan of his, and she has been pursuing efforts to have in all of the libraries that we have in different countries in the world a film collection that could possibly bear his name as well, because he was one of the greatest ambassadors we had for the greatest neighborhood that we have. So thank you all very much, and thank you for your patience, and I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. With that matter before us, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Very well, thank you. Forthwith on that matter, thank you. How about number 15 next?
And that was called special by Councilmember Rosendahl.
Mr. Rosendahl, number 15, sir.
Okay, could we ask them to come on forward? This is a great day in the context of friendly customer service. We use the word constituent service. It is the bottom line of empowering our folks so that they understand what's happening on a lot of fronts. There'll be a quick presentation, colleagues, about how this system works, and it's for us to use, but more importantly, it's for the constituent out there who can appreciate the opportunities to learn more about things. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Len Paco. I'm with the Bureau of Engineering.
And I'm Randy Price with the Bureau of Engineering also. Thank you.
We're here to report on the conclusion of the pilot program of the Public Way Reservation System, or the PWRS. The PWRS is a web-based application designed to capture all of the street activities in one database and then use that information as a tool for coordination. The PWRS is in response to a couple of council motions requesting improved coordination of non-emergency construction activities in the public right-of-way. The current PWRS ordinance is for a pilot program in the Bureau of Engineering Central District. The draft ordinance included in this report is for permanent consideration of the PWRS citywide. The draft ordinance will essentially stay the same. It will require all entities who intend to perform any work or activities impacting traffic lanes or so in streets classified as major, secondary, and collector streets to coordinate and resolve conflicts when scheduling reservations. The basic changes we propose are: one, to implement this PWRS citywide, and two, to include streets classified as local to this requirement, because local streets can play a major role in traffic circulation of the area. During the pilot period, we focused on three areas. The first was to develop the computer application and the website for the system, which we'll demonstrate here. Second is to capture the construction work and activities in the system for the Central District area. And third, to use that information and start implementing the use of the system. Randy?
Okay, thank you, Lim. The Public Way Reservation System, the purpose of the Public Way Reservation System is to capture all the activities that are occurring in the streets, so those people that wish to use the streets in the city of Los Angeles can coordinate with one another to mitigate any traffic impact and impacts to local businesses. And the way that they can access this website that the Bureau of Engineering has developed is through the City of Los Angeles' homepage. And so they would go to the City of Los Angeles homepage and scroll down through the quick links, and they will come to a button that says Interactive Maps. Once they click on the Interactive Maps, it will take them to a link which is the PWRS viewer, which stands for the Public Way Reservation System. And if you click on the PWRS viewer, you will go to the Public Way Reservation System. If you then hit the Accept Conditions button, and that takes you to an interactive map where you can find out what is going on in the streets in any parts of the city. The Public Way Reservation System has been a pilot in the downtown area, although we've been capturing the information throughout the city. So to begin to work the application, you would type in an address, and in this case, we select an address of 404 Figueroa Street, and if we click in that address and put in some dates for a date range, so the beginning date that we would put in would be today, and then we want to know all the activities that would be occurring over the next few months, so we can put October 24th, 2009, and then hit the search button. And then the application will zoom into that location within the city, and it will display and identify all the activities that have been scheduled to occur, whether private or public activities. This includes activities such as First Amendment marches, filming locations, and all those types of activities. If you notice on the screen, you'll see that the address that was typed in is highlighted in black, and around it you'll see a number of symbolized, shaded areas where activities have been reserved. The green hatched areas are the filming locations, and they've been reserved for the next few days. We also have a line there which is a utility permit, which is scheduled. They're going to schedule to do some type of utility installation in that area. We have some activities by the Department of Water and Power, their power group, as well as many activities in the area. The things that you can do is, if you scroll over to get the tooltip that tells you what it is, you can click on a particular item and get more detail, including the contact information of who is going to be working in the street and when they're going to be working. If you click on further information, you'll get more information. You can open up the permit that authorizes the entity to be in the street, and that also will tell you what the purpose of that activity is. You can also click on a button to generate a report, and with this report you will get details of all the activities that are going to occur within 1,000 feet of the area that you're interested, and that report will show the type of activity, when it is going to occur, a contact person that you can contact if you have any questions or concerns about the activity, and it tells you who to coordinate with if you're going to be in the area also. This report can be printed by anyone, the public or any other user. This is an internet application, so it is available to everyone that has an internet connection. And that concludes the demonstration. The powers is available to anyone, and I thank you and hope it's useful.
Mr. Rosendahl?
The point of this all, folks, is to make it more constituent friendly. People in communities want to know character scale community. They want to understand their own geography. They want to know what's going on in their geography, not only for convenience and where can I drive or not drive, but just the awareness. It's an empowerment tool. So I just watched this. First thing I do is go online to the city website. Yes. Then I click down to this particular thing, and I can even zoom in on a given street.
Right. That's correct.
And so it's a very simple thing, but again, it's an empowerment tool. I want to thank you very much for putting this together and for making this presentation to the council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, there a vote on this matter?
Yes, there is.
All right, open the roll. Close the roll. Wait, before we do that, we do have... No, okay. All right, thank you. We did have a speaker card. He's waving it. Okay, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Very well, thank you. How about number 9?
That was called special for cards.
Okay, Anthony Wayne Ford, Dr. Clyde Williams, and Zumadog. In that order.
Good afternoon. Let the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Once again, there is a motion related to special events. I believe the city should pick up tab on these events and approve this motion, which I consider the Michael Jackson special events. He's the one that started all this. Why is the city picking and choosing what events to pay for, and why not for all of them? You have motions on this matter from A to F. AD, you ask the sponsors to reimburse the city for all fees and costs, but motion E and F, you asking the city to absorb the costs, which comes to around a total of $10,000. Why? If you absorb the cost for 2 events, then do it for all the events. I mean, special events bring a whole lot of money to this city, especially for small vendors, hotels, restaurants, so on and so forth. And I don't see why we have to pick and choose which events we're going to support and which ones we're not going to support. I think if we're going to do this, then we should do it for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, not here. Zumadog.
Yes, first of all, please stay tuned in because we're talking about special event fees, and I've been coming here 3 years, and I've been reading the memo over and over again. Special event fees, oh, can I have one? Special event fees, they are supposed to be for small community events open to the public, not for profit, and non-commercial. I'd like to remind council members that the special event fee is a community-based waiver, not a business stimulus fiscal package for commercial entities like the Dodgers or the AEG or the Grammy Awards or the Vanity Fair Party. Basically, to sum it up in Zumadog legalese, the community's been getting screwed for 3 years since I've been coming here because it's money that comes out of the general fund. Every time they're paying $50,000, $70,000, whatever it is, $100,000 for their quote-unquote special event fee waivers, well, the people that provide the services, the police, the fire, the removals, the parking, they don't waive their fees. It comes out of the general fund. So now we are talking about real financial problems. Furloughs, loss of services, not even being able to patrol our streets or extinguish. Every time they pass one of these donut sprinkling ceremonies, we're talking about blackouts of the fire departments. Yes, we're not even going to be able to extinguish the flames in the city that are happening. And you guys continue to spend on this nonsense. It must come to an end. And what I'm also here to say is please pay attention to the next item. Because just when they finally said they're going to do something about it, well, now they're asking for more time. Womp, 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 womp. You could just call me Charlie Brown. You could call City Council Lucy. And you can call the special event fees the football. And people, you guys, will you please do... I'm glad you like that. Please act upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zuma. Please no singing in the chambers. That matter is now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Very well. Number 13.
That was called special for cards.
Arnold Sachs, who is left, and Zumadog, who is here. Zumadog, number 13.
I enjoyed that little humorous, little Zumadog no singing because, of course, Dennis was kidding because, of course, it's allowed. So anyway, what we're talking about to continue on the special event fee waivers, the number one issue on American Top 40, I am Casey Kasem. And now we're up to the number one issue Zumadog has talked about when he's come here day in and day out, only to be scorned by Councilmember Richard Alarcon for saying mentally ill homeless people keep showing up, and they don't plan on doing anything about any of it. And he's never been more right, because Zumadog's been talking about the special event fee waivers. As we are talking about on this agenda item, City Council, they said they were going to do something about it, because they just couldn't take Zumadog coming in here anymore and reminding the people at home that every time they pass one of these shady, shill, non-profit, money-funneling, commercialized, subverting the community spirit of this event and illegal from what I understand, which is why they're doing something about it, well, they always seem to just pass the buck. So again here, they have finally decided to do something about it. Isn't this exciting? They're going to crack down on the special event fee waivers and try to reflect a little bit more of what Zumadog's been saying. But now for the punchline, people. Drum roll, please. Item number 13, Park Squeezar, relative to delaying. Boy, if council does anything in this city, it's delaying things when it comes to saving taxpayer money. Here we go, people. Relative to delaying the effective date of imposing the moratorium on special event fee declarations. Womp, 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 womp. So I'd just like to remind you, people, they're going to be closing down the fire stations because they got to keep giving money to AEG Live and the Dodgers and the Vanity Fair and Academy Awards. Money for the community. This is illegal. I'm going to sue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That will close our public comment on that one. If we can please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 8, and that was called special for cards.
We have Mr. Charlie Brown for 1 minute.
I like that, y'all. To the people at home, he's calling me Charlie Brown, and that's a kind of little fun humor I do appreciate and enjoy, and I'm always willing to...
If you could watch your language, please.
Okay. Yeah, I don't cuss, y'all. I don't cuss. They just, sometimes they get passionate. I am talking about passionate things.
That is a warning.
Yes. Okay. I guess watch the language as far as don't cuss. I mean, I don't think I ever have, so please continue to interrupt me to issue that warning. Now I'm not so happy, but this is about Paul Koretz. He has a motion. Yes, the guy's barely been here at all. The guy's really impressing Zumadog. It's to crack down on overly zealous and overly aggressive photographers known as paparazzi. This bill will deter invasive paparazzi by attaching liability to the publishers. So in other words, the paparazzi won't be taking their telephoto lens and going into Jennifer Aniston's bedroom or going into Zumadog's car to take pictures to get paid, because the publishers will no longer be able to profit off it. Thank you, Paul Koretz. I wish I supported you more.
All right, Mr. Zine is on the queue.
Thank you. Our final item for the day.
Take your time.
And I would say it's a no-brainer when it comes to this particular matter, that the paparazzi and the issues that have been generated with them. I'm very pleased that the Assembly Speaker, Karen Bass, has introduced it. It's passed the Assembly, and we're asking that we support Assembly Bill 524, and this will assess a $50,000 civil fine for taking and selling of images or recordings of people engaged in personal or family activity with actual knowledge that the images or recordings were obtained illegally. It's basically the paparazzi law that we've been working on here in the city of Los Angeles for quite a while with our neighboring jurisdictions of Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, and Malibu, and the LA County Sheriff's Department. So I would ask that we support this bill that is currently passed the Assembly. It passed the Senate committee, and hopefully the Senate will pass it, and the governor, I am confident, will sign this. So this bill will give our celebrities, their families, when they're doing some personal activity, some peace and tranquility, and they won't be infringed upon, as we see what's happening with the paparazzi that have become large in numbers and causing problems in the communities throughout the state of California. So as the final motion of the day, the final item of the day, Assembly Bill 524, that we pass that by Assembly Member Karen Bass. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis P. Zine. We now have Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Councilmember Zine for the work that he's done on this item. Probably the residents of my district will benefit the most from it, because there are more celebrities that are mistreated and have their privacy violated in every conceivable way, with people using telephoto lenses to pry into their bedrooms, people trespassing on their properties. I think this really is a no-brainer. I mean, I've seen some of the most ridiculous things, like Lindsay Lohan trying to have a corned beef sandwich at Jerry's Deli with 15. Yeah, I shouldn't have harassed it. No, with 15 photographers in tow. Jerry's Deli people kicking them out, and them continuing to take pictures through all the windows. I don't know how people can live a life like that. It certainly must make them have second thoughts about the success in the entertainment industry that they strove to have initially. I think this will help people get some of their lives back, and I think it's a great idea. It really is a no-brainer.
Thank you very much. Any other members wishing to be heard? All right, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Mr. President, item number 17 was adopted previously. However, there is an amending motion that has been distributed. Would you like to reconsider item 17?
It would be my pleasure. Let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote on reconsideration. And tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is back before us. We'll accept that as friendly amendment if there's no objections. And if we can open the roll on that as amended. And close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved as well. We'll send 8 forthwith with no objections. And next order of business.
Council has motions for
Those are posted and referred.
There is an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Zine requests to be excused Wednesday, November 25th for city business that meets council policy.
All right, Mr. Zine is excused.
And that clears the desk.
All right, colleagues, any announcements? Any announcements? If not, let's please rise for adjourning motions. I did it. We can ask everybody in council chambers to please rise for our adjourning motions. Thank you so much. And Mr. Rosendahl, I'm sorry, Ms. Hahn, and then Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you. I'd like us to adjourn today in memory of William Roger Crow of San Pedro, who just died on July 22nd at the age of 67. Roger was born in San Diego. He graduated from Cal State Long Beach and later earned a master's in education from Pepperdine. In January 1965, he married Carolyn Fote of San Pedro. He worked for the Los Angeles County Fire Department for 31 years and retired as an assistant fire chief in 1998. He has mentored many aspiring firefighters as well as taught at the National Fire Academy in Maryland. He's survived by his wife, Carolyn. There are 3 sons, Douglas, Donald, and David, 3 grandsons, and numerous nieces and nephews. He will be dearly missed by his family and his friends. His funeral service will be held Saturday, tomorrow, at 11 a.m. at Green Hills Memorial Chapel in RPV. I also thought we could adjourn today in memory of Alexander Pope, who just passed away July 21st. He was 80 years old. He was born and raised in New York, New Jersey, and Chicago. He eventually settled in Los Angeles, where he practiced law in Westwood. After becoming partner in his firm and then serving as legislative secretary for then-Governor Pat Brown, Alexander Pope became the L.A. County Assessor in 1978. He held appointments on the California Highway Commission, the Los Angeles Board of Airport Commissioners, and he was a longtime activist in the Democratic Party. Alexander Pope was survived by his wife, Kate, his children, Daniel, Stephen, and Virginia, 2 brothers, Hallowell and Whitney, and 2 grandchildren. Memorial services are pending.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like us to adjourn in memory of Irene Wolt. She's survived by her 95-year-old father and a host of devoted and devastated friends. She's a Mar Vista resident who passed away on Tuesday, July 21st, at the age of 63. Irene spent her adult life as an activist and a chronologer of the movement that flourished in the 60s and thereafter, first in New York and later in Santa Monica and Los Angeles. She worked with several printing collectives and as an activist and an archivist in the anti-war movement, the feminist movement, and the gay and lesbian movement. Her personal collection of posters, itself a goldmine of activity history, will reside in the Center for the Study of Political Graphics. She was also a writer, a teacher, and an alternate media specialist with the Center for Students with Disability at Santa Monica College. In her capacity, she served as a passionate advocate for students with disability. She converted books, films, and other materials into a format accessible to these students. She survived, as I mentioned, by her 95-year-old father. The services will be held at 3 o'clock today at the Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City. May she rest in peace. I have another one, and it's kind of personal, and obviously many of you people might know him, Dr. Joel Weissman. He's survived by his domestic partner, Bill Hutton. You might remember that Dr. Joel Weissman was one of the co-figure-outers of what the AIDS epidemic was all about. He was born February 20th, 1943 in Newark, New Jersey. He graduated from the Kansas City College of Ophthalmology and returned to New Jersey to practice medicine for a few years. In 1975, Dr. Weissman acknowledged his sexuality and moved to Los Angeles, as many of us did. He joined a medical group in North Hollywood, where he began to notice a very puzzling pattern of medical cases, beginning with a young man in his 30s who had developed very puzzling symptoms. He soon noticed the same symptoms in 2 of his other patients. After sensing something was out of the ordinary, a colleague put Dr. Weissman in touch with UCLA immunologist Martin Gottlieb in early 1981. Dr. Gottlieb, also a gay male patient with similar arrays of afflictions, after the discovery that all of their patients had the same terms and forms of pneumonia, two of which already had succumbed to the illness, Weissman and Gottlieb wrote the CDC bulletin that sounded alarm bells around the world. Dr. Weissman would eventually become known as one of the first physicians to detect the AIDS epidemic. Dr. Weissman soon became a national advocate for AIDS research, treatment, and prevention. He becomes the founding chairman of the AIDS Project Los Angeles in 1983 and helped organize the first dedicated AIDS unit in Southern California. Dr. Weissman not only witnessed the devastating effects of the disease in his professional life, but also in his personal life. With the death of his partner of 10 years, Timothy Bogue, in 1991. Dr. Weissman remained an active ambassador for AIDS Project Los Angeles until heart disease overtook him this year. Dr. Weissman passed away Saturday in his Westwood home at the age of 66. In addition to his partner of 17 years, Bill Hutton, Weissman is survived by his brother Mark, a daughter Stacy, a granddaughter, and 2 nieces. Plans for his memorial service have not been announced. May he rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Reyes, we'll do all members on that. Mr. Reyes. All members, yep. Now we got all members on that. Thank you. No other adjourning motions. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. We will next be in session on Tuesday, that is the 28th of July. Have a great weekend, everybody, and this meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is hereby adjourned.